Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to the second day of the 53rd running of the ADAC RAVENOL 24 hours of the Nürburgring. The weather gods are smiling on us again, set fair for a beautiful afternoon and evening before we get into race day tomorrow. We had a very exciting sessions yesterday that has given us some idea of the pace of this circuit. The further forecast is pretty much exactly what we have right now. Clear blue skies, temperatures in the mid-20s Celsius and rising to 29 today, 31 tomorrow. Overnight tonight is the summer solstice just after 4 o'clock in the morning, so tonight is the shortest night, and tomorrow we'll have a little under 8 hours between sundown and sunup, making this the shortest night in a Nürburgring 24 hours for a very, very long time. Officially right now the temperature is 19 Celsius. Feels a little warmer than that out of the wind, but that's keeping things very pleasant. My name's John Hindhoff. Alongside me, just to my right, in the Global Broadcast Centre overlooking the start-finish stripe, is Johnny Palmer for this session, which has an odd number of cars, literally, as well as metaphorically, because there are 17 of them in what is called top qualifying. This is the pole shootout by any other name, JP. Why 17?
Yeah, it's a peculiar question, isn't it? And I've been scratching my head a little bit throughout the course of the week. It's stipulated in the regulations that it's a certain percentage of the SP9s that are entered into the race. That's 27 for this year. We are a little bit down on numbers, I suppose you could say, because there are big clashes with other huge events around the motorsport world, including the sailing 6 hours of the Glen in the States. Still, there's great strength in depth, and what it means is that there were 5 places up for grabs at the end of qualifying 2 last night. Combined session, so Q1 bolted onto Q2 as if it's one long session. But the nice little thing about Q2 was the first 15 minutes, when we started at 8 o'clock yesterday evening, the first 15 minutes was just for those GT3/SP9 cars that weren't already into top qualifying. So they had the track to themselves, and there were 15 cars that were trying to get those crucial top 5 positions. And Ben Constanduris, Joe Bradley and I had kind of had a chat before we started that session saying, isn't it all going to be about this first 15 minutes and basically one lap? Because once you've done an out lap, you're only going to have a chance to do another 25 and a bit kilometres, and by that point the track's going to start to get very populated with all the other categories.
And indeed, Chris Haase set the best time, I think, on his first flying lap in the defending champions of this race, the #1 Audi. But we had to wait right till the other end of that 3-hour session, 3.5-hour session, 3.5-hour session, to get another fast lap. And it was a lap of some legend, to be honest. Not the fastest lap, good enough for third position on the timing and scoring, and it was the Porsche, the number 16 car, that wasn't in, and that was the real car that was missing out of that for Scherer Sport. And Laurens Vanthoor was bolted into that car. It had been out and it looked like it was going to go for a lap, but then it got a puncture and limped back. And we were hoping against hope it wasn't the same drive shaft problem they'd had earlier on. They bolted Vanthoor in. He went out. He had 1 lap to do it. And my goodness me, he timed it perfectly. I know you guys were watching back at the accommodation. Peter and I were Peter Mackay and I barely able to take a breath on the lap. The director gave us as much as he could of the onboard of that, and it was brilliant stuff. And that car then in for Scherer Sport. Now, 17 cars. We weren't sure whether we were going to get the number 11 SR Motorsport by Schnitzelbaum Mercedes in, but J-Mo Hertling will be in that car. Their fastest lap was disqualified, and they will start, regardless of what they do here, according to the message we had last night, they will start at the back of the lead group. So I'm not really certain why these guys are in here, but let's stay with what we've got in front of us. Walter Hornung Live on the stream this morning, our race director, a bit like the third round of the FA Cup, as Johnny was mentioning earlier, drew lots to see who went first. And going first is the Valkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martin Vantage of Nicky Team.
That, for me, is fascinating because...
Except it's not.
Well, are the cars in a long line yet?
We've got a car out.
Well, the Audi's moving around. I didn't think it had been waved off yet because the Audi is supposed to leave the grid 6th with Marcus Winkelhock at the wheel. So I think this is an outlap from the pit lane, and they'll now come round and start to be lined up on the main straight. The first car isn't
that was pit, so that was a countdown to pit open.
The first car isn't waved off until 1:30.
Oh, there we go. So we've got a little more time.
Yeah.
So earlier on, the lots were drawn, the balls came out of the bag or whatever.
But yeah, so we got 5 cars that entered the session last night.
Yeah.
As you've said, quickest car was the Audi of Chris Haase. Second fastest was the Lamborghini number 28 out at Sportsline. Marco Mappelli did the time in that. Then there was another Lamborghini, the number 27. The 16 Porsche leaving it late, that qualified third. But the 5th qualifying car, I remember there was about a 10th between those two Aston Martins. So it squeaked into the top 5. And I was waiting to see what number it was going to get. And the number 1 wasn't appearing. And I thought, have they actually remembered to put a number 1 in any of these envelopes? And finally, 34 Trinity Solutions, brackets Valkenhorst. Where's that going to start? The very front. Right. So it's the last car to have qualified, and now it's going to be the first car to be waved off with Nicky Team doing the qualifying.
This is a little bit earlier than it has been in the past. It's normally further through the afternoon's events. This is effectively the big one here on Friday afternoon. And good afternoon to those of you joining us, or good morning, good evening, wherever you are around the world. This is, I mean, it's not by the sun high noon, but it's hot. The temperature on the track is hot. This is not what we saw last night. We're not going to get the 8-minute 10 that we saw from Chris Haase yesterday evening, I don't think. The track's in pretty good condition. There's been some cars out there. The other thing that's different from what you've seen so far, if you have been following along, this is the first time that there's no cones on the front straight. So you now can enter the pits directly off the end of the North Loop. And you can still come around the back and come in through the Grand Prix circuit into the pit lane if you so desire. But that will take one of your laps away. You are allowed 2 flying laps. So a warm-up lap and 2 flying laps. I suppose you could just come around through the pits, but that wouldn't be a quick lap, would it? So cars coming around to the pits now, out of the pits now. One of the things we noticed, JP, is there's been an interesting choice of qualifying drivers. Yes. Because you pulled your face there a little bit. It almost looked like it was slightly in pain.
I kind of was, because before the sheet was issued with the drivers that are going to do top qualifying, I thought, oh, let's try and guess and work out who I would put in the cars, right?
I think I would have got about a third of them.
I think I would have probably got about a third, or maybe even a quarter of them. It was a toss-up for me between, in the 34 Aston Martin, which will be the first car off, Mattia Drudi off the back of a Le Mans pole, and Nicky Team. Because with the respect of Christian Krognes, the thing is, Christian's driving 2 cars this weekend.
Yeah.
He's also in the number 35 car from the same team, Trinity Solutions. That's a Pro-Am car, so actually Christian's the quickest driver in that. So as soon as you put the Christian in the Pro-Am, who then is left over in the 34, say left over. Nicky Team, Mattia Drudi, that's an embarrassment of riches. They've gone with the Dane.
Yeah.
Then I looked at the 33 Falken Motorsports Porsche. Julian Andlauer stands out because he's been rapid the last couple of days, but it's Nico Menzel that goes in that car.
I'd have got that one wrong. No disrespect to Nico. I'd have put Andlauer in that car.
But then you think, recent Nürburgring Nordschleife specialist, perhaps Nico is the better bet.
I'd have still put Julian Andlauer in that
maybe.
car.
Okay. The 30 car, the 30 Trinity Solutions, that is an all-AM lineup. It's an all-bronze lineup, so it might have been Henry Valkenhorst. They've elected to put Stefan Aust in that car. Fine.
As you see, a permanently 1 from 3 there. Yep, absolutely.
45 realised Condo Racing with Rinaldi, the only Ferrari in the whole of the race. David Perel of South Africa. You've got Felipe Fernandez-Laza, who was in the Ferrari 2 years ago for
That's who I would have put in. Felipe Fernandez-Laza.
Axel Jeffries, good driver, but then I thought, Thomas Neubauer, he's often got some very good laps around here. So I was thinking, yeah, Fernandez-Laza or Neubauer. They've gone with the Frenchman.
Okay.
Lamborghini, which was the 4th fastest car last night after the 2 qualifying sessions. Lamborghini number 27, which is the Red Bull apt car. Jordan Pepper did last night's time, so I thought, well, he's got a fair shout. But Mirko Bortolotti also, and Danny Juncadella. I mean, to be honest, it could be any of those 3.
I think I'd have put Juncadella in.
Fine. Well, it's Bortolotti, who's the Lambo specialist, I suppose.
So I wouldn't have been doing well so far.
No. Then the number 1 Audi, Chris Haase, wasted no time at all last night. He did an outlap and then the fastest lap of anybody.
Yeah, so it's Chris Haase in the number 1.
All day long.
Yeah.
No, Marcus Winkelhock. Okay, so that's another one we got wrong.
No disrespect to anybody who's going out there. We're just sort of saying it was a topic of conversation.
Certainly, yeah. Certainly, yeah.
And who's next? That was the Jutta R8 is next.
The 8 Jutta Racing Audi, which is a Pro-Am car. That did initially have Frank Stippler in it, but he's going to concentrate on Ford Mustangs instead. So they've taken Stippler out, put Pierre Caffer in.
So Pierre Caffer's qualifying.
You would have thought so. Yeah. But actually it's Alexei Veremenko, who is one of the non-pro drivers. And I kind of understand that because...
the builds.
Exactly. Yeah. There'll be a fair bit of...
and how many times do you get to do... it's a full tank lap. It has to be mandated, but with fresh tyres and hardly anybody else on the Nordschleife. What an experience for that. I understand that one.
Yeah. The other thing I should mention is fresh tyres, yes, but they're all going to be on full tanks of fuel. So you can burn off a little bit on the installation lap, and then that's a question as to how much does the second lap improve. The tyre performance drops, but the car becomes lighter, and considerably lighter because you've done nearly 26 kilometres. Next up is the 35 Trinity Solutions Aston Pro-Am. As we've established, the quickest driver in there, Christian Krognes, so the Norwegian gets his seat. 48 was always going to be interesting. This is the Porsche from Black Falcon Team EAE. Interesting, first of all, as to whether they were going to get the car fixed, because Mustafa Mehmet Kaya had his incident at Metzgersfeld last night and ended up underneath the tyre barrier. Took a long time to get that car towed out from the tyres, on the flatbed, back with the team. And I caught a glimpse of that car during qualifying 2, and there was so much work going on that car, lots of body panels off, but it is on the grid, I'm told, so they might have had a bit of a late night finish. But number 48 in Pro-Am, which is one of the Intercontinental GT Challenge entries as well. Do you put Gabriele Piana in that, who's had a great result probably about 10 years ago in the 24-hour race? Or one of the up-and-coming drivers, and they've elected for the Dutchman Dan Arrow to put him in the car.
A great driver name, that is, Dan
It's
Arrow.
Brilliant. Yeah, but it's not actually his real name.
It's like Max Revs.
His real name means arrow in Dutch, but sounds more like... And none of us English speakers have a real difficulty in saying it. It's spelled P-I-J-L.
Okay.
Pale. Pale, which means arrow.
Okay.
So I can understand. Yeah, it's making it a lot easier for us.
Here we go. 1 minute. Rattle through the others then.
So then the 16 car, very last minute last night. The time was done by Lawrence Vantor. He's going to do top qualifying. Yeah. 28 at Lamborghini. Marco Mappelli was quickest last night, but they put Luca Engstler in the car.
Okay.
17 Mercedes, all 3 Mercedes were already pre-qualified. Adam Christodoulou is going to do the time in that. He's the Nordschleife specialist after all. We've got the number 44 Falcon Motorsport Porsche. I was kind of looking forward to Dorian Boccolacci doing a time, but we're going to see Maurice Schuring, who was a Le Mans winner last year with Manthey, but he's driving for Falcon Motorsports in this event. Speaking of Manthey, the 911 Grello all the way down in 14th position to be waved off from there, but Kevin Estre will drive it, perhaps unsurprisingly. Maro Engel has had something like 4 Glickenhaus trophies in the past, so he's in for I think it will be a 5th. I'll check that. Jamo Hartling you've mentioned. No, that's a Pro-Am Mercedes, number 11 from SR Motorsport Schnitzelarm. They'll have to start from the back of the grid anyway, but Jamo Hartling will do the time. And Yusuf Ovega in the only Ford Mustang to make it into top qualifying. 3 Mustangs making their debut at the Nürburgring 24 hours.
Okay, so Nicky Team is off and running in the Valkenhorst Aston Martin Vantage. as is Nico Menzel for Falcon and their Porsche.
The other thing to remind everybody about is that since the qualifying races, the 34 Aston that Nicky Team drives has switched tyre manufacturers. Used to be on Pirellis, it's even on our list as Pirellis, but they're now on Michelins.
All right, can you make a change on that, please?
Yeah, I'll try.
Right, just put a big M on there.
I'll cross the P out.
And then we'll know.
Indeed.
Right, thank you. I actually have got an updated version of that, which I could probably
Have
get.
you?
Yeah, I could probably. And
Keeping that for yourself?
oh, it's on my phone.
Okay.
So only this one pole shootout for top qualifying. The 5 transferees, 5 transfer spots were in the combined times from yesterday. So the top 5 qualifiers who weren't already qualified then go forward. You follow me here?
Just about.
Yeah, I'm confusing myself now. I'm going to stop talking about it and just concentrate on the cars that are actually out there. Green flag further back down the grid for the number 8, Alexei Varamenko. Christian Kronius for Aston Martin Vanquish. Ready to go.
Now, news from Davey Avema of Sportscar 365. I had wondered whether this might be a rule, but then I couldn't understand why Vantor was allowed to drive.
Yeah.
In that first 15 minutes of last night's qualifying too, 8 o'clock till 8:15, if any car set a fast time, their fastest time within that 15-minute segment, you have to change your driver.
Right.
So Chris Haas's not eligible, therefore, to do this bit. But Vantor's the difference, because Vantor led set it in the normal bit of the session.
And he wasn't out there anyway at the start, I don't think.
Thank you, Davey. He's got so many answers for me this weekend.
Oh, we've got a problem for the Falcon. They've got a right rear puncture on that car, the number 33 car. Second off, Nico Menzel. We've seen this a few times. How many's that now? That's at least 3 right rear punctures that we've seen on the Falcon Porsches. One of them was a drive shaft problem as well.
Not on the Falcon, that was...
No, that was another Porsche,
that was
That was the sharer car.
16, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my apologies, mixing up Porsches there.
Was that 33 Porsche still on the Grand Prix circuit?
Yes, it was.
So it can get into pit lane.
But you can't change your tyres, can you? I suppose you could put another set of tyres.
Well, is there a rule to say if one's punctured, then surely you might be able to? You would burn one of your laps, but, you know, what option have you got at this stage?
You only have one flying lap at that point.
You have to, yeah. Because it's done about how many times you cross the line. Yeah, the 33's in the pits. You can see it from our vantage point. So
you know what? That right rear looks like it's still got air in it. As off goes J-Mo Hertling. No, sorry, that was Maro Engel in the Get Speed car. J-Mo still to go in the SR Motorsport by Schnitzelheim. This car, whether it gets on pole position or not, I'll tell you now exactly where it's starting at the end of the lead group. So, yeah, new tyres for the Falcon machine. And they're having a good look. I mean, how's your look if you can't even get round onto the Nürburgring Nordschleife? Ford Mustang is back on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And they are aiming to take the Glickenhaus trophy for pole position. Jim Glickenhaus, what an enthusiast for this race and for racing in general. Now this does mean that the Falcon number 33 is going to be right at the back.
yeah.
So what happened? Oh, it was a right front, and it's
not rotating.
It's jammed solid. I can see the smoke coming from it. He's lucky not to have clipped the wall there. So the whole right front, that's a stuck wheel. So that's either a brake issue.
I'm not sure they're going to be able to get that fixed, because if it's done some damage to the suspension as well, or the brakes, it's not just a question of taking the damaged tyre off and putting a new one on.
Well, it's still up on the jacks at the moment.
They're looking around. They've got a bit of time here, I suppose, because, as we've mentioned, they've burned one of their laps. It's all down to a single qualifying lap then for Nico Menzel now.
So it's Nicky Team who's the first car, and they seem to be taking it relatively easy on their outlap. I would suggest That's got to do with the temperature. Stefan Aust in the multicoloured Aston. The multicoloured Astons is sort of like a TV test card with cartoon children on them. Listen to the rumble of that V8 through the Caracciolo carousel. So called because there used to be a drainage ditch that ran around the inside, and Caracciolo, by legend, was the first one that realised rally driver style. We would call that ditch hooking. They could get it through there, and eventually it bore his name. Oh, glorious sound of the burbling Aston. Well, they've got the 33 running at some distance off the back of the rest of the pack. So without having to go offline, without having to let a whole load of people back, that will be the last car on the track, but with only one flying lap. Now, we've got traffic, believe it or not. Just let me finish the thought as well, because I started something and I didn't finish it. I apologise for that. The Aston, the multicoloured Aston, they are running in the colours of the RTL television marathon, broadcast marathon. Basically, it's like a telethon for raising money for good causes and for children's charities. So we wish them all the best in that, and also say hello to our colleagues who were near neighbours of us at Le Mans in the TV compound from Nitro. They are doing their broadcast from within the Porsche lounge.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, for Porsche fans, it's not been the best start to this session with the 33 car having to dive in the pit lane, but there are a number of bullets in the Porsche gun, if you like.
So. 5
in this session, and Porsche have not taken a pole position, the Glickenhaus Trophy, since 2018, when Kevin Estre did an 8:09.105. That's not quite the quickest time that we've had in recent years. Raffaele Marciello 2 years ago, an 8:09.0. And you'd think, oh, that was in a BMW. Well, no, he was driving for Mercedes just 2 years ago in the Bilstein car.
Although being at the front of the grid has not necessarily been the place to be in terms of the finishing.
No, that's true. You'd almost want to give up pole position for the record that stands in terms of the last time a pole car. 2016. 2016 says.
And that was the last
over my shoulder.
That was the last time a AMG won as well.
Okay. Well, that was one of many Maro Engel pole position times, actually in the 8:14s.
Yeah.
We've had a 10-minute lap, so 2021 was wet for Nick Yellerly in the BMW, but otherwise they're all 8 minutes, and a number of 8:09s as well.
McLaren went very, very quickly here.
Yeah, that was 14, I think. Yeah. I didn't quite get down to writing that one, but I've done the last 10 years.
Third position has been a good starting spot recently. I think is it the last two or the last three? Last two have been won from third position.
To answer your question about traffic, that was just Thomas Neubauer getting past the bronze-rated Stefan Aust.
Right.
I wonder whether they had a discussion actually beforehand to say,
might have.
Is it better for both of us if I just clear you, having started from third and fourth respectively?
So here is the number 34 going through the first part of the Grand Prix circuit with Nicky Team on board. Starts to drop down the hill. Remember, on full tanks, and a decent crowd already. I mean, the campsites are absolutely chocker. This is the one we're calling the Cool Runnings Aston, isn't it? I saw this the other night and immediately thought of the Cool Runnings bobsleigh. You get the low shot at the front of it, you'll see why. So Nicky Team has set the fastest time in Sector 1, being as he is the first through at pace. Two cars very close together going through there was Nico Menzel and Thomas Neubauer. Neubauer in the sole Ferrari in the race. Only one BMW in the race as well, the Rover racing car. Because of the congestion of the fixtures, they basically ran out of drivers. I had a few people taking issue with me about that when I said that at the end of Le Mans and the start of this week in Midweek Motorsport. And there was a statement from the team manager that last night that basically said, well, we ran out of drivers, really. I don't make this stuff up, you know.
It's nice for BMW to put it in real terms. I mean,
Yes.
you can start thinking about a
spin it
political
anywhere you want.
answer.
Yes, exactly.
But you know, no one could be in several places at once, and the calendar organisation is out of the control of the manufacturers a lot of the time. So it's just one of those years. I don't think this race can run any later in the year than the third weekend of June. It would never stretch into July.
It's always on a bank holiday weekend, and what the French and I think the Germans call it a bridge weekend as well, the Bucca. The Thursday is a holy day, what we would call in the UK a bank holiday, and the two Thursdays are linked to Easter because they are religious holidays. And it's either Corpus Christi, which was this Thursday that we've just had,
yesterday,
or the earlier one is Ascension Day. And therefore, you can have that 4-day weekend just using a single day's holiday on the Friday. And that has been an absolute staple of this event. What I'd also say in the event and the ADAC's defence is, they put their calendars out 4 or 5 years at a time. So we've just had all the dates for the next 5 years of the Nürburgring N24. So there's no excuse for people not knowing it. Also coming this week, we did have the fax machine set up for this. The Formula One calendars come through for next year. And I note that Spa and Formula One, which had taken the CrowdStrike Spa 24 weekend date, which therefore bumped that to next weekend this year, that has moved back into later in July. So there's a potential for that CrowdStrike Spa 24 to go back somewhere nearer to its original date in early, either later in June or in early July. We'll find that out next Friday in the press conference at the CrowdStrike 24 hours. It seems bizarre to me, Johnny, having been involved in... I'm delighted by it, but it seems bizarre to me, having been involved in sports cars for nearly 40 years, that we are now worried about congestion of major events which have got, 100 and odd cars as it is here, 76 cars at Spa, 62 cars at Le Mans, this weekend at the Sirlands, 6 hours of the Glen with the Michelin Pilot Challenge and IMSA WeatherTech there. It wasn't that long ago when we were counting the days to the next Le Mans, and that would be the next big sports car race.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it, but it provides logistical problems because there are only so many weekends in the year. Now, that said, I've got 2 weekends off in July. Where I'm not doing sports car races, and I've got 2 weekends off in August where I'm not doing sports car races. I've filled the July ones, but I've not yet filled both of the August ones, although one of those is the first weekend of the Premiership season in the UK, so I may find myself in a seat at the Stadium of Light, I think, for that.
This being the 53rd edition of the ADAC RAVENOL 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, this is just getting more and more exposure, this race, year after year after year. So it's one that so many drivers want to be at, I'm sure, that if they're contractually obliged to be somewhere else... Oh, big off for the number 16 Porsche, which is the one that sneaked in last night, remember? And it's Laurens Vanthoor who's gone off at Arenberg.
And that's the
direction of travel is just before the bridge. He's gone straight on at Arenberg, and there's an awful lot of damage to the front of that Porsche. So obvious concern for Laurens Vanthoor, and it means that anyone now heading through Schwedenkreuz and into Arenberg in the next few moments is going to have to back well and truly off. Mirko Bortolotti has already gone through those segments and gone purple through 3 of them. And a point that Peter Mackay has been making through the course of this weekend is that the Lamborghini Huracan has been very, very strong on the Grand Prix track. And no surprise, perhaps, then to see purple times through those first 2 splits, which are the Grand Prix track.
That car is very, very severely damaged. Now, he's lost that coming in all the way to the edge. Did he put a tyre on the grass there? My goodness, it nearly got airborne, and he's hit the unprotected part. In fact, there's no barrier protection there. I think He hit the inside curb. Yeah, hit the inside curb, and he's a passenger. Then he gets airborne, so he's goes across the gravel trap without actually hitting it, and into the catch fencing. That car is seriously damaged. That car is extremely seriously damaged.
Was Lawrence already out of the car and talking to marshals? They were gathered around the tyre wall as if he was out and sort of slumped against the tyre wall as they were checking him out. But I just want to be sure that Vanthoor's
not
necessarily okay straight away, because it's always difficult to tell that, but just as long as he's out.
In the meantime, Mirko Bortolotti in the number 27 Red Bull Team Apts Lamborghini GT3 Evo 2, the man that was fifth away, is absolutely flying. There's a smattering of fastest laps or fastest sector times for everybody at the moment, but Bortolotti, as Nicky Team comes to, Bortolotti's doing the best, Nicky Team comes to the end of the Dottinger Her for effectively his first competitive lap. Red flag. I don't think there was any choice there. I honestly do not think there was any choice. The burble of that Aston Martin is incredible. Now, the only thing that I would say about the damage to that car is that it's on the passenger side that the major damage is, but I'm pretty certain that in the trees there, I could see...
He's sitting on the wall, the helmet's off, there's two paramedics in front of him, so they're talking, and he's just gathering his thoughts. So that's the best news. You can fix race cars.
That's
I'm not saying it's going to be fixed in time for the race, but I just want the driver to be okay. And he's clearly very, very shocked and winded, and
he's actually sitting on a bit of armcore that the car damaged and has flattened down.
So it's formed a seat.
So it's formed a seat for him.
Well, that's very convenient, isn't it?
I mean, wow.
He was out walking normally, so I guess he's okay.
Yes, he's okay. We've just heard from the team there in the background. He's walking away, helmet in hand, not even limping, and takes a glance over his right shoulder at what I will say is the remains of his car. Every single corner on that car is damaged.
Yeah.
The left rear particularly. Now, I think he was in trouble the moment he hit the inside curb of Schwedenkreuz, and that pushed him wide. He was then on the grass, which is very dry and dusty, but it was being launched over the curbs that then gave him the trouble, and he's up over the top of the armcore into the catch fencing, which does its job absolutely correctly. So inside curb, there's the touch on the inside curb for Sally, and just at that point Lawrence is a passenger, and it's already starting to go very badly wrong.
That inside curb at Arenberg is very steep as well, so it's dropped off the edge of that. And
I think the touch of Schwedenkreuz on the inside. And by the way, I take back what I said last night. The loop on their Y from Sally is actually a Porsche Y. So that is all Porsche lettering on that car. The best news, Laurens Vanthoor is out of the car. And he'll be wondering, well, I wonder, no, actually he'll know. He'll know. He hit that curb hard enough that he'll know. But there is the absolute illustration, Johnny Palmer, of why we say that round here is a game of, well, not a game at all, actually, where a difference of inches, millimetres sometimes, can have absolutely incredible consequences that far outweigh a mate, what was it? Not even half a tyre over that curve.
Oh, yeah.
Not even half.
We know how well he knows this place.
Yeah.
Because look at that lap he did last night in complete darkness. So all of that is muscle memory, but it shows how hard he's having to push in an attempt to get pole position, a front row start, a front two-row start, let's say. And he knew how valuable that initial lap was in terms of the tyres being brand new. Yes, the car was heavy with fuel, But if you don't do it on the first lap, you're very unlikely to go quicker on the second lap, and that's how hard he was pushing. I actually think the nose of that Porsche, as it hit the Armco, went underneath the metalwork, and that's why the front is so compressed now. Get another chance to describe it to you.
Is important. He comes over the brow, turns in all the way from the right, and then just clips. I mean, turned in a fraction early. And from that point, he was chasing the car.
Yep.
I mean, that is how little margin for error there is. And that is a huge commitment corner. And then as soon as he's on the dirt, he's literally a passenger.
Yeah, it's gone underneath the Armco, and the catch fencing or the debris fencing has done a good job in retaining the car as well within the confines of the circuit. But I dread to think the amount of damage that has been done to the front of the car.
My worry there is that the right front A-pillar has taken damage.
Yeah.
270 kilometres an hour through, over the top of that brow and into the left-hander of Schwedenkreuz, the Swedish cross. That is a huge commitment corner. And there will be very few people here who have been on any of the sims or the platform games who haven't had that accident, where you just mistime your turn in there and either turn in a bit late and understeer out onto the grass, or turn in a tiny bit early and clobber the curb, and at that point there is no coming back.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how quick you get on the brakes, you're not coming back from that.
You've got to be that quick through Schwedenkreuz to make sure that your run out of Arenberg is sufficient into the foxhole. And one corner leads into the next to the next.
It's because it's so quick, Johnny. You're coming up over the top of that brow, and there's so much time to be lost there. There's not much time to be gained, because it is such a big commitment corner, and the pros are going through there, as Peter's just mentioned to us there on our text, at 270 kilometres an hour, and you know you can't take it easy through that.
A few years ago in the race, it was either Earl Bamber or Matt Campbell actually lost it coming out of Schwedenkreuz, and went all the way down the right-hand barrier in the race on the grass. Still got it stopped in time. Might have taken a bit of gravel at Arenberg, but carried on. The problem is the lose has come much earlier in the corner. Car's already rotating, and from that point, as soon as the rear overtakes the front, Laurens Vanthoor's a complete passenger.
Here's something else as well. That's one of the resurfaced parts of the circuit, because there used to be a change in surface just after you came out of that right-hander, which you had to be a little bit more careful that you didn't upset the car as you were coming through that. Now I think it's a bit smoother, quite a lot smoother, and it's resurfaced all the way down through the foxhole as well.
And whereas at Brunchen the top layer of asphalt has actually risen, so that it means that the curbs stay the same at Brunchen, but the track's slightly higher, so it's made the curb a bit flatter. I don't know whether at Schwedenkreuz it's now a deeper curb, and he's thought, oh, I can take a bit of it. Well, I mean, you know, how many times has he been around here? But it does change from year to year, from NLS meeting to NLS meeting, and in the dark I would have thought he would have been staying off the curb. Also, the traffic was forcing him into certain areas he didn't want to be.
I'm going to throw something in here as well. The onboard glitched just at the point, or actually even possibly before the point he hit the curb. So did something break before that? And that was the glitch on the camera as the bottom of the car hit the ground, or something snapped and sent a shockwave through the car. Because it's so difficult to see and say after the event whether some of that suspension damage was cause or effect. We think it's all effect. Right rear was damaged. So hard to say. Hard to say.
I mean, that is the car with the drive shaft problems earlier in the week, and I know that did significant damage to the engine as well.
Oh, really?
So whether that got a new engine or not, I'm not sure, but it did do, you know, obviously as a drive shaft breaks, then where it is connected to the block can start to rip things apart as well. So how much work has been done? You could argue lots of new bits have been put on that Porsche, so they shouldn't be breaking. However, they've had to be changed in a hurry. So It's very difficult to. I mean, you know, Laurens Vanthoor might not even know what precisely has happened there.
And just underlining how big this track is, we've still got cars coming into the pit lane. So Adam Christodoulou, and one of the final cars to come back into the pit lane. JG, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for all your messages and submissions to us here in the Global Broadcast Centre. Hashtag RSL19N24, because it is our 19th Nürburgring 24. Put this on a t-shirt, by the way, for this place. We ask them to go to the limit. Sometimes the limit wins. Wow. I'm not sure there's anything else for me to add after that. So now we wait. And the question will be, do we reset this and start again, or does everybody start from a single lap? And in that case, does that help the Falcon Motorsports number 33, who'd effectively lost a lap?
Yeah, if everybody now only gets one lap, that will certainly help. I mean, it's a very tight schedule here today, and it depends how long the stoppage is going to be. This session was due to finish at 2:30, which is 34 minutes away, and the next action will be at 3:15 for another race, one of the support races on the Grand Prix circuit. So how far do you push things later in the day, bearing in mind that the 24-hour cars are going to have to do their third and final qualifying session at 4:15.
So that's for everybody from 17th on down, is it?
It is, yes. So you still get a chance, if you have not made it into top qualifying, to improve your position from 18th to 27th in SP9s. Also getting word that Adam Christodoulou in his Mercedes has been pinged for a pit lane speed limit breach, and therefore his fastest lap time will be lost.
Wow.
So if he only gets one in, that's him starting from the back as well. We're slowly collecting quite a number of cars now who will potentially start from the back. We've described to you about the number 14, not the 14, the Schnitzelarm Mercedes number 11, that's already going to have to start at the back, regardless of what time it sets in top qualifying. And it's sounding like the number 17 Mercedes AMG Team Get Speed GT3, the AMG GT3, will have to start towards the rear as well. Kevin Estre in the early part of his first flying lap in the Grello Porsche, heading through the Vidal chicane a couple of moments ago. But there are no times displayed, even if the cars got through. Well, actually, having said that, Nicky Team did set an 8:32.8, but that was, I'm guessing, after the red flag was shown, and therefore wouldn't count. Of course, if he did get across the line and the red flag was shown afterwards, does the 8:32 count? But it's certainly not up there in terms of a fast time.
I don't know that was done as you say it, whether that was done in time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he wouldn't, even if he crossed the line, he may well have, the lap may well have been timed, even though the red flags were out. And there'll be big question marks as to whether you can set a fast time, in inverted commas, when the track has been entirely neutralised, or more than neutralised, red flagged for the recovery of the number 16 Cherer Sport PHX Porsche, and for Laurens Vanthoor to safely make it back in a rescue unit. That's a long, long way from home, Arenberg. It's not as far as you can get, but it's a little way from any access routes. I'm impressed with how quickly the medics were on the scene there, but they will just sort of materialise here, because just as the pickup lorries do, and the Armco trailers and everything else, that they all have little hidey hole places. So Laurens Vanthoor was very quickly joined by the medics to check on his well-being.
I don't think that is one of the areas where they've got a effectively emergency station part of the way around.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. 27 Lamborghini of Red Bull Team Apt, with Mirko Bortolotti driving that car, finishing 4th in the qualifying session last night. Remember, 5 cars progressing to make it a full 17. as we've said, slightly odd number, but that's now down to 16 cars. And of those 16, a few of them are going to have laps either deleted or blatantly ignored in the case for the number 11 SR Motorsport Mercedes.
I actually think they're going to have to restart this from ground zero, effectively.
Yeah.
And reset this as if this first part didn't happen. Which means, well, I don't know what that means for anybody who's had laps deleted. Maybe they'll just have to throw that out. But I think that also is manna from heaven for Falcon number 33 car. There's as you can imagine, there's a frantic bit of reading of the regulations to decide what is allowed and what isn't allowed in terms of spare cars. If that car can be repaired, and bear in mind they've got until late morning on Saturday in terms of running it in, so you would be able to get some practice in. I mean, there are Porsche teams that are based very close to round here.
True.
Including none other than Manthey, who I'm sure could help out with anything that needed doing, and would be asked sort of do, I'm sure, by Porsche. But if not, are you allowed a new chassis?
I mean, this is not the first instance where a car has been crashed in top qualifying, and I'm sure it's not the first where it then cannot be repaired. So there's always force majeure to say we haven't got a car to race with anymore. Can we pick another one that's near enough identical? And there's an opportunity then for warm-up at midday tomorrow.
Correct.
So they've got all the morning to get prepared for a 40-minute warm-up session. So we'll wait to see.
Okay, we're just hearing now that... So what is going to happen here is they're going to red flag and effectively checker flag this session for the time being, because we need to re-prep the circuit for the touring car masters on the Grand Prix track. So top qualifying, it will be abandoned at this point, and we'll adjourn until 4 o'clock this afternoon, and then presumably it'll be reset. I'll wait to hear from that.
I think that's a decision that Walter Hornung and the rest of his team will have to make.
I think that's very pragmatic to what they've done now, because you've got people sitting in their cars ready to go out.
Yeah.
And
they can race on the Grand Prix circuit, no problem.
Correct.
Whilst Arenberg is repaired.
So you're not delaying anything by doing that. I think that's a really sensible use of the circuit.
But will it be 2 laps of qualifying or just down to the 1 lap? This session was due to take basically an hour. So the first car waved off at 1:30 and we should have been done by 2:30. So you've got to try and find 60 minutes somewhere within the remaining time. You can't compromise the 90 minutes that is qualifying 3 for all the other runners, surely. The other SP9 cars as well.
No, but you have got a big gap. No, you haven't, actually. You've got an hour and a half's gap between... no, you haven't. You've only got a 30-minute gap between the end of the Tourenwagen Legend race. So it's the Cup and Tourenwagen Touring Car Trophy, and then we'll have top qualifying. Then I presume we'll have the Touring Car Legends race, and then the hour's worth of hour and a half's worth of qualifying and delay the drift show, possibly.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
So push that later on into the evening.
Yeah.
Last resort will be to trim that 90-minute session to say an hour, and that gives you a little bit more wiggle room. But I don't think that's fair on the other runners.
I don't think they'll do that.
No.
So it suggests to me that they will try and squeeze it in and push everything back half an hour or so. So I'm afraid to say that that is going to be that as far as our pool shootout for now. And hearing from race control, as we reported to you, that the resumption of the pool shootout, top qualifying as it is termed here, will not start before 4 p.m. local time. That doesn't mean it'll start spot on 4 o'clock. We haven't had that, but it will certainly not be before. And the suggestion from the information that gives to me is that will very much depend on the work that's going on at the top of Arenberg at the moment in terms of replacing the arm core and ensuring the safety of that debris and catch fencing and where they are going into the ground. Absolutely did its job. But, I mean, talk about flattening 2 layers of metal barrier. It was so flat that it was almost perfectly a seat for Laurens Vanthoor when he got out of the car. The good news is Laurens is fine. The bad news is the Share Sport number 16 PHX Porsche SP9 Pro GT3 R Type 992 is, I'm afraid, looking in less than pristine order.
Kevin Estre going into the Share Sport PHX garage to check with mechanics I'm sure that he knows pretty well on Laurens Vanthoor's welfare, because they are teammates so often.
And he was also asking what happened with the car. Do you know what happened with the car?
Yep.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. Safety first is always the situation. So the teams now debriefing, and so coming up next will be, as the timetable dictates, the touring car cup and cup car trophy races. It's their second of 2 30-minute races this weekend, and that is due up at 3:15 local time, so in just around about an hour's time. But that allows the work to continue on the Nürburgring Nordschleife at Arenberg to ensure that we can go on time. Top qualifying not restarting before 4 o'clock local time.
With now indication that they are considering shortening qualifying 3, just so that they can prize it into the rest of the schedule, which will be a disappointment for others that had banked on trying to improve their position within class, but it's kind of a necessity.
One installation lap and one timed lap on the Nordschleife for top qualifying, restarting somewhere near 4 o'clock this afternoon, so that's in just under 2 hours. And the following third qualifying, following from Q3, which is everybody else's last chance to qualify, will be shortened, but at the moment we haven't got any further detail on how much that will be shortened by. So a disappointment for Johnny Palmer and me, John Hindorf, that we didn't get to see the shootout we were hoping for. The good news is that we will still get a shootout later on in the afternoon. Don't go too far away, because we will be bringing you more action as we have it. But reconvening at 4 o'clock this afternoon, when we'll have a single top qualifying lap shootout. So a proper bull shootout for presumably the remaining 16 of the 17 cars. By then we should have some more news on that Share Sport PHX number 16 and how bad the damage is. That car already on its way back on a flatbed, and also what the options are then for that team who qualified into top qualifying last night so spectacularly and with such drama yesterday evening. Well, drama of a different type for them this afternoon. With apologies that we can't bring you any more, but you'll understand why safety has to be the absolute first concern. Qualifying 3 will almost certainly then have to be shortened. We'll give you all the details when we come back. It's the Glickenhaus Trophy for pole position for the 53rd running of the ADAC 24 hours, and we'll have more later on in the sunshine from the Eifel Mountains. For Johnny Palmer, I'm John Hindhaugh. Bye-bye for now.
Motorsport, GT3 R, Nico Menzel, der ist nicht die komplette Bock. Hier, der Mustang, Ganz gerne mal.
Hello everybody, and a warm welcome back to the Nürburgring Nordschleife for a delayed session for top qualifying. This was due to begin a little earlier on in the day. In fact, it did. We had cars around the racetrack and then an absolutely almighty accident for Laurens Vanthoor down at Arenberg, which means that the number 16 Scherer Sport PHX Porsche is not going to be able to run in top qualifying. The session was immediately red flagged in order for the medics to head to that vicinity. They got there very, very quickly, but the car was an absolute wreck. Thankfully, Laurens Vanthoor able to be taken away, and early indication is that he is fine. But clearly now the car cannot run, and we're going to be instead looking at 16 cars rather than the allocated 17 for this top qualifying session. It's been adjusted, therefore, and the pit lane will effectively open at 4 o'clock. Cars still sent off at 10-second intervals from the pit lane rather than the main straight. And the other big difference, gentlemen, Joe Bradley and Ben Constanduris, I'm Johnny Palmer, is that everyone's only going to get 1 lap rather than the prescribed 2.
Yeah, it's going to make it even more exciting than it perhaps normally is. I think importantly as well, the good news is that Laurens Vanthoor was taken to the medical centre after that massive accident. He's been examined. He showed that he's in good health. So that is the best news coming out of what looked like a very, very scary incident.
The question will be whether we get a chance to see that car participate in the race. Such was the damage, the car going through the Armco barrier, and the images really didn't look very good of the car itself. Laurens was able to get out of the car under his own steam. The team is based here at the Nürburgring, so it is quite possible that the car could go back to the shop rather than the garage, and they could work on it overnight. We've got about 24 hours before the race begins. In fact, we've got exactly 24 hours until the race begins tomorrow. Do they have another spare chassis in the workshop? Because I presume by looking at the car that the chassis will be a write-off, but there are lots more questions to be answered there.
Yeah, so there's going to be some shuffling of the order. 27, which is one of the Red Bull, or the Red Bull apt Sportsline Lamborghini, has now been potentially pinged for not obeying red flags and actually overtaking on the red flags as well. That was the Stefan Aust Aston Martin that Mirko Bortolotti passed. Then he reacted to the red flags and slowed just before Spaltenschwanz, but that's currently being investigated, and it might be that his best time, a bit like Adam Christodoulou, is potentially going to be taken away from the Lamborghini driver. The question mark about Adam Christodoulou is that he was caught speeding in the pit lane, 7 kph above the required 60. But we were asking ourselves before coming on air, because the session was red flagged, is that now wiped from his record and he can go again in this session, or does it linger on into the new 4 o'clock part of the day? I've no idea.
I just want to make a comment on that Bertolotti incident with regard to the red flag. As he came upon the first red flag that he was able to see, he was too busy focusing on the rear end of another car, and he would not have been looking away from that rear end of the car to gauge getting by the car. Immediately he passes the car that he was focusing on, he seemed to immediately notice the red flag and backed out massively. And I think it would be very harsh to penalise him in those circumstances, as there was a lot happening at that time when that red flag came out. For him, I mean.
Yes.
This is still called top qualifying. This is, and I guess the question remains, is this a resumption of top qualifying from before, or is this a new session with new regulations? If it's a new session, then the fastest time regulation that we saw Adam Christodoulou the speed in the pit lane, which meant that he would lose his fastest time of the session, that would be of the last session, and he now participates in this as a new session. and it therefore be null and void. If this is a continuation of the last session, then his fast lap time, which will be his only lap time, will be null and void. He will then be at the back of not the 17 cars that we have here, because we have one car in this session that is already being put to the back of the group. So not just the back of this session, but the back of the SP9 field categorically. And then you've also got the 16 car that won't set a lap time. So potentially 15th is where he's going to be. And then you've got the question mark over the Lamborghini as well. I did notice that he is in this queue, so he is going to go and participate and set a lap time that may or may not be then deleted.
I think you're better off doing that and then arguing things afterwards.
Yeah.
At least there's a lap in the books somewhere, rather than going, oh, well, why do we even need to bother? Set a time, then ask questions later. What Mirko Bortolotti will be saying is, well, that was in the previous session as well.
Yeah, true.
Caught me doing the red flag incident.
And normal red flag situations, normal red flag regulations is you take it from the lap previous to the red flag. Well, there was no lap previous to the red flag. The red flag came out on everybody's opening lap. So I would like to think, and the way I'm looking at this is it's a clean sheet of paper. Everybody's going out into this fresh session of top qualifying, and we're starting completely. Everybody is, whatever's gone on in the past is null and void, and it's all about qualifying and forming the grid for tomorrow's start.
It's the same order then of the cars that set off earlier in the day from the main straight. So the 34 Aston Martin, which is on the Michelin tyres, Danish driver Nicky T being selected as the qualifying pilot, and the Trinity Solutions GmbH, or the Valkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martin, is set on its way. 10 seconds later, Nico Menzel in the Falken Motorsports Porsche, number 33. Now, that had its own dramas in the first version of this as well. Didn't make it beyond the Grand Prix track, in fact, Ben.
No, a binding right front brake didn't allow that wheel to rotate, which then caused a puncture. And they were able to come and fix it in the pits. So whatever the pressure, whatever the reason for the binding brake, they replaced the tyre. They then fixed the binding brake, and that car was about half a lap behind everybody else. So it didn't take very long. Gave him beautiful track position because he would never have caught up with anybody. But it did mean that he, in theory, lost one of his 2 fast laps. Interesting that he's in this session because he was on his second lap when he was out on track. Therefore, in theory, he doesn't have any laps left. But that would take into consideration if this was a complete session, including what we saw previously. I think this is a brand new session, and therefore the penalties are disallowed.
It looks completely like a brand new session. It's not a continuation, so we are starting clean, and everybody's being shuffled out there onto the track. We've had 12 cars that have left the pit lane, another 5 to go. Next car out is the number 14 of Mara Engel, the Mercedes, the Get Speed Mercedes. They're looking very splendid. This is the yellow and black coloured one. The teammate to this car is that very, very pretty purple, well, different shades of purple, isn't it? The Christodoulou car.
It's been a long time since Mercedes last took victory. 2016 with Maro Engel, Adam Christodoulou, Manuel Metzinger and Bernd Schneider was part of that team.
Wow.
So what's that? Is that 8-9 years ago? That was the last time Mercedes took victory here.
Yeah, 2015, I think Adam said, didn't he? 2016.
However, Mercedes are often on pole because they put Maro Engel behind the wheel, and I think he's had 4 Glickenhaus trophies already. So now going for a 5th. 2 years ago, Raffaele Marciello, when he was still a Mercedes driver, having now moved on to another major German brand, he managed to do an 8:09.0, which is just about the fastest time within the last decade.
I'm not a betting man, but if I was, my money would be on a Mercedes. We have seen nothing of the Mercedes in qualifying sessions 1 and 2. And that's because they didn't really need to show us anything, because they had already qualified through to top qualifying. And so I think we are going to see the true speed of the Mercedes-AMG GT3 in this new session.
If you weren't with us earlier on, this is what happened to Laurens Vanthoor then, catching the curb at Schwedenkreuz, spinning the car on that short straight down to Arenberg, and then the car just disassembles itself. It's like a crumple zone going into a wall. An obvious concern for Laurens Vanthoor for a few moments there, although the medics were with him so quickly. Marshals as well in attendance. It's demolished the Armco barrier, actually split the layers apart, we think, from that high up camera angle. Still a very peculiar incident. That is a car that's had a lot of work done to it over the last couple of days after a drive shaft problem on Thursday, which did untold damage to its connecting point to the engine. So they basically sat out all of qualifying 1, then did a run-in test during qualifying 2. And it was that late time from Laurens himself, late last night, about 25 past 11, which actually got it into those crucial 5 top spots and into top qualifying, but it is out because it's far too badly damaged.
So the first car out, Nicky Team in the Volcanos Motorsport Aston Martin Vantage, just going up that rise to the iconic part of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. The carousel dips into the drainage ditch, as is the common practice these days. Never designed that way back in the 1930s. It was Caracciola who has the carousel named after now. He was the first to try it by putting the car into the concrete banked part of that corner and picked up a lot of speed, and since then it's become common practice to do that all the way through the Formula 1 years here at the Nürburgring, and now we see this as the practice of how to get round here very quickly.
Already seeing a couple of drivers and cars swapping positions on circuit. We saw it in the precursor, whereby third and fourth on the road, which has now become second and third on the road. The Ferrari of Thomas Neubauer getting ahead of the Pro-Am car, the number 30 Valkenhorst Aston Martin, which presumably has sort of been a discussion that had been established pre-session. On this warm-up lap, let me go past, as in the Ferrari to go past, because I'm going to catch you on the lap. You can follow me, you can learn a bit from me, and maybe I'll drag you along a bit. And obviously the number 30 team deciding that was a good idea. I also think that further down we're seeing a change of order between Engel and Hartling, although they're running very close on the track together at the moment. In fact, the 11 has caught up with Maro Engel, so it's actually Engel going slowly rather than Hartling letting him past.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that was a long sector 4 for the Munich man, Maro Engel, but that's only a very short sector, 10 seconds, 11 seconds. He's done about 14 seconds. All 16 cars that we had expected to take part in this session are out there, though, and circulating. So those that are potentially in hot water: Adam Christodoulou in the number 17 Mercedes. The 11 car, well, that's going to be put to the back of Group 1 anyway, regardless of its time within the session. And the other one with a bit of doubt is Mirko Bortolotti's number 27 Red Bull team at Lamborghini, that he shares with Danny Juncadella and Jordan Pepper after that alleged red flag infringement. More to follow on those cars as well.
Audi number 1 through Brunchen. From Brunchen, he'll head out through the Flansgarten. We've already got Nicky Team in the 34 Aston already on the Dottinger Horn coming back towards us. It'll not be long before he's at Tiergarten, and we will see, we'll get an idea of... this is not a timed lap, of course. We're still on the out lap, so this is an insignificant from our perspective. It's very significant in how these drivers will have got their tyres up to where they want them to be, not overusing them. And we can see Team now just easing off through Tiergarten now, just not pushing the energy through the tyres, and now crosses the line to start what will be the first lap of top qualifying.
The only lap.
The only lap, indeed. The pressure's on, eh?
We saw this last night as well in qualifying 2, where SP9 cars that hadn't got through into top qualifying through automation had the track to themselves, and they did only get one lap before they were interrupted by the grid of 120 odd other cars that joined them. But it was very interesting to see how much faster they were able to do on that single lap at the start of the session without any traffic. And only really Laurens Vanthoor right at the end of qualifying 2 was able to improve with a normal session being run. Qualifying times should be below 8 minutes and 10 seconds. We've seen as quick as 8 minutes and 8 seconds, but usually we're in the 9s. And it very much depends on the balance of performance year on year as to what the cars have been given in terms of power.
Now, I'm expecting when the Lamborghinis begin their only flying lap that they'll show good speed on the Grand Prix track. They've done so over the last day and a half or so. So 27 and 28, both the apt cars got into the top qualifying, but courtesy of the sessions this weekend rather than having been a pre-qualified car. Nico Menzel in Porsche number 33 of Falken Motorsport is already faster by 0.6 of a second over Nicky Thiem through that first bit of the Grand Prix track, though, and Thomas Neubauer not hanging around either in the only Ferrari in the whole of the entry for Realize Kondo Racing, the number 45 car. Gaps come down a little bit between the two Audis. That's surely the number 1 car getting ahead of Alexei Veremenko to give Markus Winkelhock an open road in front.
So Nicky Thiem, of course, showing purple sectors as he's the first driver into those sectors. However, beaten by a couple of tenths by Menzel in the Porsche, who's the second car in the line. So just taking a little bit of time out of the Aston Martin now is Menzel in that Falken Motorsports Porsche. Matching the time to the absolute thousandths in Sector 2 is the Ferrari of Neubauer. That's the 45, 42.779 for the Falken Porsche, 42.779 for the Ferrari of Realize Kondo.
Yeah, but it's a great time from Bortolotti through that first part of the Grand Prix circuit. We're still waiting for Mirko to complete the whole of the Grand Prix Strecke and then turn left at Sabine Schmidt's curve. Over the line will go the two-tone purple, bit of pink on there as well, the startling livery for ADAC Christodoulou's Get Speed Mercedes for the 2025 edition of this wonderful race. It's the 53rd version of the ADAC RAVENOL Nürburgring 24 h, beginning tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. This is top qualifying to determine the top 16 places on the grid. There's now the 44 Falken Motorsport Porsche with the red door mirrors, driven by Maurice Schuring, heads down towards the early corners of the Grand Prix lap.
Seems as though a 40.0 is really where you want to be in that first sector, which is half of the Grand Prix loop, and anything above that is not great, which means Nicky Thiem's Sector 1 wasn't particularly great. We still haven't got a Sector 1 from Estre, Engel, Hartling or Owega, the only Ford Mustang in the field. But 40.0 is where you want to be. Bortolotti just a little bit faster than that, a 39.9. He is still the fastest man through Sector 1. Sector 2 seems to be going to the moment to Dan Arrow. And what a man to be selected in that number 48 machine to run in top qualifying. Not a huge amount of top-level experience, Dan Arrow, but making his name for himself over the last couple of years in one-make Lamborghinis, for instance, and he's been entrusted with the Pro-Am machine to do qualifying that was in the barriers, if you remember, heavily under the barriers in qualifying last night. Rebuilt for this top qualifying and going fast.
Yeah, Mustafa Mehmet Kaya, the Turk, had the incident. I'd half expected Gabriele Piana to do the qualifying, but young Dan has stepped up, the talented Dutchman, doing racing all around the world early in his career. So many people have paid close attention to his talent. Nico Menzel, meanwhile, heading down towards Breitscheid, and now that tricky right-hander uphill en route towards Bergwerk now. The second car in the sequence. Car ahead of him also on, well, in difference to this car, on Michelin tyres. The Falken cars, no prizes for guessing, they are on Falken rubber, both the 33 and the 44. And it's Menzel finding the time over the Dane, about 10 seconds ahead of him on the road.
Menzel just being beaten in Sector 5. 46.560 was the Falken Porsche of Menzel. Through Sector 5, he's just been beaten again by the Realize Kondo Ferrari of Neubauer, 146.2. That's a considerable difference there, picking up time in Sector 5. The leader's just into Sector 6 now, and the Menzel car just coming through in a 35.7. Again, we wait a little bit longer for the rest of the field to come through and see just how that matches.
Unfortunately, consistently, Nicky Thiem, the first car on the road, being beaten in all 6 of the sectors that he has completed, so it's not going to be a particularly good time for the 34 Valkenhorst Aston Martin. Aston Martin yet to take a victory overall in the Nürburgring 24 hours, the 53rd edition this year. And guess who's going fast at the tail end of this queue? Kevin Estre. He's already shown his class last weekend at the Le Mans 24 hours, despite not being able to show his class in qualifying there. But he is 13th on the road. He's got the purple Sector 2, the purple Sector 3, and now the very short purple Sector 4. We wait to see half the field through the long minute and a half of Sector 5.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? That's a lap on a conventional track, really. Just barely under 2 minutes for that Sector 5. Sector 5 is the section between Schwedenkreuz through Arenberg, down the Vauxhall, up to Kallenhardt, all the way to Exmüller, before we then slip into Sector 6, which is slightly shorter, only just over 30 seconds for Sector 6. So that is a key part of the track and a very technical part of the track to keep the speed up, especially coming out of the Vauxhall, down into the compression, and then up the hill towards Mexicafeld. You need a bit of courage about you, and a lack of imagination is my view.
Well, we're going to get 4 purple zones, 4 purple sectors in a row for Kevin Estre. Waiting now for him to go through that second longest Sector 5. Meanwhile, Nicky Thiem's heading for Galgenkopf and actually getting a change of surface flag, the slippery surface flag, indicating maybe a bit of spillage of something offline. Yeah, there's some quick dry that's gone down there that he's now kicking up the dust. So Thiem onto the Dottinger Hoor, the first of these 16 cars to make it that far. But already Nico Menzel has proven to be a tad faster. And the answer to the question about Kevin Estre, he's again quicker than all the other cars that are ahead of him on the road through Sector 5.
Purple in 2, purple in 3, purple in 5. Not sure about 4 because I've taken it off my screen.
Yeah, it's short,
purple
but
in
yes.
4, yeah. He's absolutely on it. We know how good this driver is. His drive at Le Mans, that opening stint in the number 6 Porsche, and then to get that car starting at the back of the hypercar field, and that was all about that opening stint from this driver, Kevin Estre. That's entertaining us here. The number 911 is the car we're talking about, the Manthey Porsche. We know how good they are.
Aston Martin coming to the line to set the benchmark for the rest to try and beat. We know that it will be an 8:19.396 in Nicky Thiem's first and only effort. It's a pretty slow lap for the Aston Martin.
So Nico Menzel, we reckon, will be a tad faster, but how quick is this first of, what, 4 Porsches that are in the session going to be? Menzel will cross the line with an 8:14.2. That is 5 seconds faster than Nicky Thiem's Valkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martin Vantage. So Porsche have the upper hand, although Thomas Neubauer in his blue and white Ferrari has been really doing well through various sectors and will go even faster by 3, nearly 4/10 of a second. Ferrari 296 run by Rinaldi, quickest so far.
Next up, the number 30 machine. That is another of the Valkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martins, but this is the Pro-Am machine that's already given track position away to Neubauer, and a discussion being had, so it's not expected to challenge the top 3, and indeed slowest of the 4 runners so far on an 8:38. Next will be Mirko Bortolotti, starring in top qualifying earlier on, but only slots into 3rd position.
Next up, the number 1 Shearer Sport Audi. This is the car that changed its tyre supplier, remember, this week. Swapped from the Yokohamas onto the Michelins, and that will come through in 4th. An 8:15.294. They're coming across the line thick and fast now.
So many different manufacturers that are potentially or have been in the mix so far this week. 0.3 of a second the difference, Ferrari to Porsche. Bortolotti missed out on 2nd position by just 84 thousandths of a second. We're obviously still waiting for Kevin Estre's time in the Manthey EMA Grello Porsche. He's still in the long Sector 7. In fact, speaking of the devil, at Schwalbenschwanz, the second concreted section. And Lorenz makes no delay coming out of there on towards Galgenkopf. The rebuilt 48 Porsche of Dan Arrow goes 6th fastest for Black Falcon Team EAE. So that at the moment is the outside of the third row.
And that splits the two Walkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martins, because Christian Cronjes went up into 6th position. They've all been beaten by Luca Engschler in the second of the Lamborghini Huracans from Abt Sportsline. He goes into 5th. Christodoulou only 8th position in his Mercedes.
Yeah, it's my money down the drain. This is the car that everybody is looking for, though. The number 911 just coming off the Dottinger Horn now through towards Tiergarten. The 911, Kevin Estre, just flicking the car left and right, takes the right-hander, and then will blast out very early on the power there, skirts the barrier on his right.
This could be
Looking at the line, Johnny.
a first pole position for Porsche in 7 years, and it was a Grello car that took it in 2018. That was his teammate at the time, Laurens Vanthoor, but now Kevin Estre to the top with an 8:12.7, a full second clear of anybody else. However, Mauro Engel hasn't yet had a say.
The only car left that can really challenge Kevin Estre at the head of the field. Mercedes with just 2 victories to their name at the Nürburgring 24 hours. He comes to the line. Engel can only slot into 3rd, and that is top qualifying over and done with. Yes, there are still 2 cars to come, but they are too far down as Pro-Ams. Mercedes into 3rd, Ferrari 2nd, but Kevin Estre does it again.
So maybe an unlikely result to get one of the Italian cars on that front row. This is Yusuf Ovega coming through in the Oakley HRT Ford Performance Mustang to make it into the top 17 as it was. Remember, only 16 running in this session because of the crash for Laurens Vanthoor earlier in the day. Yusuf Ovega, who is gold graded, will go to 11th fastest in that Pro-Am offering from the Haupt Racing team at 8:18.6. And now a problem at the just after Flansgarten.
Yeah, it's just at the Flansgarten,
For
Johnny.
J-Mo Hartling in the SR Motorsport by Schnitzel on Mercedes. Well, this was the car was going to be put to the back of Group 1 anyway, so not a huge amount lost, but it wasn't the final car on the road, so Yusuf Ovega will have had to deal with the yellow flags throughout his lap.
Just him was behind Hartling, but you're right, that would have slowed Ovega down just a little bit, slots into 11th position. And that is top qualifying done. Not a particularly fast qualifying lap, but that's possibly because it's the only lap that they had available to them. Had they been able to do 2, they would have been able to push that boundary even tighter. But Kevin Estre with a pole position time over a second clear of everybody else.
Yeah, well, that's 1.2 seconds, isn't it, if you're counting tenths. 8 minutes 12.741. Not the quickest lap we've seen this week so far. And in second place, the Realize Condo Racing Ferrari, 8 minutes 13.9. That's a chunk of time to put that Porsche of Estre on the pole position. 8 minutes 14.233 was the first of the Mercedes. That's Mauro Engel in the number 14. And unfortunately, the number 11 Mercedes, we mentioned that car looked like it had just ground to a halt. It hadn't hit anything. That car just looked like it had stopped out there on Flansgarten. So it will still qualify in 16th spot.
Kevin Estre, though, receiving, I'm sure, huge applause and cheers down at the Goodyear Carer at the bottom of the hill. Driver's door open as he waves to the crowd. Part of the reason why we didn't get anywhere close to the 8:10.5 set by Chris Haase last night is that all these cars were on full tanks, or should have been, at the start of the session. So as they were released from the pit lane, that's your chance to burn a bit of fuel off on the installation lap, and then you push as hard as possible. Thomas Neubauer is absolutely ecstatic at his work there, and I'm not sure many would have had him down to be able to out-muscle all of the Mercedes and several of the Audis as well. Aston Martin was a bit of a disappointment for Nicky Team, but are we still in a phase of the weekend where one or two are not wanting to reveal precisely all the pace they have? I mean, does qualifying really matter for a 24-hour race? Is the old adage.
Does it? That's Kevin Estre.
Well, yes.
The boot is on the other foot for Estre because qualifying didn't matter in hypercar last week at Le Mans. and he came through the field from the back of the hypercar field to lead the race. He eventually ended up, after 24 hours, on the second step of the podium. He's going to be on the pole position. Can he make it one step further up that podium this weekend?
Le Mans, you know, after about 4 kilometres, you've got a big, long straight where you can overtake people pretty easily. Here, that doesn't really exist until about 23 kilometres in. You want to have nice, clear track ahead of you and stay out of all the trouble, because it's a competitive 27, 26 car SP9 field. There's going to be a lot of squabbling going on in those early laps.
Standard.
Especially of those cars, actually, that missed out in this top qualifying, that perhaps in pure pace could have been in this qualifying, or indeed, let's say the number 11 that's going to be out of position. It's not a full reflection of the pace of our cars because of the slightly quirky nature of the format this year, and then this disturbing the way that it's happened today with top qualifying being only 1 lap.
Yes, it certainly was off-piste and not to the prescribed script. I mean, go and ask the guys at Rover Racing, for instance. They're the only ones with a BMW GT3 in this race. Were not able to get their car into the top 5 after qualifying 1 and 2 were finished. In fact, 9th, although they did have some pre-qualifiers ahead of them. In reality, that would have put them 8th, I reckon, when you take into account those cars that were already into top qualifying. But Augusto Farfus, Jesse Krohn, Raffaele Marciello, Kelvin van der Linde, they'll be hoping to try and get through those early laps unscathed, and their final starting position is still undecided in actual fact, because if you're going to start the race from 18th, might be 17th, might be 16th now, depending on how many cars are actually eligible to start in the front pack. But those places in behind the top qualifiers, it's all dependent on whether you can go faster in qualifying 3, which is now a shortened session. There's 65 minutes rather than the 90 minutes, but Q3 will have a say on the back of the SP9 grid.
Under normal circumstances, we're putting a lot of emphasis on that those drivers only had 1 lap. Under normal circumstances, at a conventional racetrack, you really have only got 1 lap where your tyres are optimised. The Nürburgring is a little bit different, perhaps not so much in top qualifying, because you're supposed to have a clear lap, and that's what you're given. And maybe, you know, the pressure of that 1 lap qualifier that we've just seen is kind of common practice.
So top qualifying we had to wait for a good portion of the day, eventually getting there, and it did not disappoint. Kevin Estre, even though he was waved off as the 13th car in the sequence, you had to keep your eye down at the bottom of the screens. The purple times were on their way, and Kevin Estre doing what he does best in across the line, actually flattening the rest of the field by over a second. 1.168 the differential between his car and the realised Condo Racing Ferrari 296. Can the Ferrari be quick across a stint length and not just single lap speed? But we knew the Lamborghinis were fast in certain areas of the track. The Ferrari has just been sneaking beneath the radar. Might it have a say for this weekend?
I wonder whether Lamborghini did what Joe and I were talking about in the break and went back and analysed what they had learnt through the first half of that first top qualifying session and tried to maximise this one by maybe making a couple of setup tweaks. It's gone the wrong direction because they were stronger in the first one than this.
Everyone will have gone back and tried to tweak something. And it would have been a very rare decision from a race engineer and a race driver not to fiddle. Even when you've got, you know, that's the best time we've done all week. Yeah, but we're still going to change something. But why? Because that's what they do. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you do eke a little bit more performance, and sometimes, and I think the Lamborghini may be an example of that, where you maybe go just a little bit over the edge with performance and you lose something somewhere, lose a bit of balance or somewhere. But certainly the tyres would have been at their fittest going into another lap with a clear run. Your tyres aren't going to be necessarily as good as where they were on the first lap, because you are wearing them out ever so slightly, but you are wearing them out.
Of those cars that are potentially under investigation for infringements, either, well, both of them actually earlier in the day. So the 27 Red Bull team apt Lamborghini of Mirko Bortolotti, he did a time good enough for 5th position, 8:14.3. but will that now be removed because of his alleged breach of the red flag regulation, doing some overtaking when the reds came out after Laurens Vanthoor had his incident at Arenberg? And the other car, Adam Christodoulou's number 17 Mercedes, qualifying in 10th place provisionally with an 8:17.3. Again, that car could be put to the back of the lead group. But a few moments ago, Kevin Estre crossing the line with an 8:12.741. And in 2018, his teammate on that day, Laurens Vanthoor, who we're obviously thinking about at the moment, as although he was cleared physically by the medics, we wait to see whether he is cleared okay for the race itself. Plus, are they able to find a spare car in readiness for the 53rd edition of this race?
It has been announced during that session that they have withdrawn from the race in number 16.
Okay. Thank you for the update there. That hadn't got through to me. So we are going to be down to just one Scherer Sport PHX car, and that is the Audi, which has switched to those different tyres. But they are the defending winners from a peculiar race in 2024, where we barely had any hours of running. In the background, by the way, actually you can hear the flat six of Kevin Estre's car setting off on its quick lap. So a chance to see precisely how he did it around the 25.3-kilometre racetrack.
It fascinates me how these superstar drivers actually drive the Nordschleife. It's on a conventional track, which is where the car is now on the Grand Prix part. It's maximising your braking point, your turning point, the speed through the corner, using all the track on the left, using all the track on the right, through the left-right flick of the chicane, the faster version this time before we're about to turn left, and through Sabine Schmidt corner, and then out onto the Nordschleife. And these drivers, the like of Kevin Estre, will optimise every single metre of this Nordschleife section. They will maximise their entry, they'll maximise their speed through the corner, and it's just fascinating to watch. They know this track, every single inch is, they've been around this so many times. They know what curbs to use, as we saw there. They know what curbs, more importantly, not to use. And we saw that earlier, didn't we? With that slight mistake, whether it was cause or effect. We wait to find that out, but tremendous to watch, such talent.
And there have been changes to certain parts of the racetrack, as we were discussing earlier on in the day. Certain bits of it have been resurfaced, repaved, and that has brought the road level either slightly lower compared to the curb, or at Brunchen slightly higher. So the Brunchen curb on the exit is not as steep these days. Schwedenkreuz, though, which is, we think, where Vanthoor got into his slide, just taking too much curb, or did something break on the car. Still trying to work out precisely what happened. But this is the moment where Vanthoor had his spin, blistering speed through Schwedenkreuz, and to just get the car to vaguely the other side of the road in time for Arenberg takes some talent.
And by riding on board there with Kevin Estre, you now realise just how fast Vanthoor was going there, because that was almost flat out, and it was almost top speed for Estre. There was the slightest breath off the accelerator, because actually, by the looks of things, as you get to the apex, there's a slight rise and a slight bump just to unsettle the car, and you saw Kevin's car moving around. Laurens had lost the car before that point, but I wonder whether that bump then compounded his correction. We continue on the lap with Kevin Estre. Nothing particularly super dramatic right now. It's clean, but he's definitely not overdriving it.
No, it's all about smoothness. It's all about positioning the car. It's all about positioning the car, not necessarily in a conventional way for, say, a right-hander, but you position the car for what's coming after that, and it's that knowledge of the track, of what's coming after, around this one. Is it that section where I need to keep a little bit before I turn in, a little bit to the left through the sweeps there, the right-hand flat-out sweeps, before we then get on the brakes, and just watching it inch perfect, staying off the high curbs, using the exit curbs, just letting the car breathe, keeping the engine revs up, getting the right gear, of course, all part of the job for a driver like Kevin Estre.
I noticed on the Grand Prix loop at the very start of the lap, the fronts were not quite with him. He had a little bit of understeer through some of the Grand Prix sections of the track, but presumably that's exactly what you want, because the car comes to you through the lap, and as we're now midway through the Nordschleife, front end is much more as he wants it. When he turns, it sticks, it brings the car round, then he can get on the accelerator to bring the rear of the car around, and it works really well through this section, which is flat out apex after apex after left after left after right. You just have to keep your foot pinned and believe.
Let's just listen to the engine through Kesselchen and Klostertal, because this is flat. Then another breathe, slight dab of the brake.
A little bit of a lift again. A little bit of a lift through Klostertal, and that's the left-hander before you head towards the right-hander that leads towards the carousel. And they're heavy on the brakes through the right-hander. Now we got get on the power nice and early. Let's just see how he takes and where he positions the car to enter the ball of the carousel. Takes it nice and early. You feel like you're abusing the car, rattling across the concrete slabs, throws the car out. The inertia fires you out of that the carousel ball. And then this, probably the hardest part of this track to learn as a beginner, into the section through Esbach, Brunchen. We're in to Whipperman at the moment. And this is where the track knowledge will bring you the lap time. Positioning the car, maximising your turning speed, which of course leads on to maximising that all-important exit speed.
He's climbed through the curbs there. Could have used more if he wanted to.
So heading down towards Brunchen now, massive campsite, huge, great, really music festival going on, and then a race as well. And so many people actually forget the sort of main reason for being here at the Nürburgring for the 24-hour. That's the curb that's slightly lower than this year at Brunchen.
Yeah, a little twitch there as well.
Ice curver, where it's very slippery at times, not on a day like this. Flansgarden. I didn't hear the car actually leave the ground. It might have done by a matter of millimetres. And now heading for the Stefan Beloff S in the distance and the second concrete strip at Schwalbenschwanz.
This is a really, really tricky part. The track goes uphill through a very fast right-hander. It's where you choose to lift, where you choose to get back on the throttle, and then the left-hander leading up to the Kleiner Carousel. We then into the Kleiner Carousel, a smaller version than the carousel. Now we're getting towards the all-important right-hand sweeps onto the Dottinger Hohe. And this is important because this speed through here, through this right-hand section, getting onto the power nice and early, you carry that speed all the way down this really long straight, maximising out, let's say, 270 kilometres an hour.
They come out of that last corner at 220.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of, if you come out at 10 rather than 20, then you carry that disadvantage all the way along these couple of kilometres. And because of the aerodynamics of a GT3 car, you're hitting terminal velocity pretty quick, and as you can hear, he's going no faster.
Yeah.
So a waiting game now. Through Antonius Bucher, the kink underneath the bridge. How late do you brake into Tiergarten? Still flat, and now the breath of the throttle, the braking down to 110 kph for that kick out of Hohenrhein, and the link road back to the Grand Prix circuit. So this is the reward after a huge lap from Kevin Estre to see the lighting gantry in the distance, and it was an 8:12.741. Certainly not one of the quickest times we've seen in top qualifying over the years, but remember, full tanks and a warm day as well, so maybe trickier to do to get the tyre heating process, whereas the session in the past has been held at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening.
My first Nürburgring 24 hours had Kevin Estre on the pole in the McLaren. Can you remember that?
Just about, yes.
Yeah. I think that was about 2015.
2014.
What was
there
that,
was a McLaren
14?
on pole, I think, in 14.
Well, that was my first one. There's the grid.
Here we go then. Kevin Estre then with a pole position for Grello, and the whole Porsche brand have had to wait 7 years for it. and alongside a Ferrari of Thomas Neubauer, the 45 realised Kondo racing car. Then Maro Engel's Mercedes for Get Speed, the 33 Falcon Motorsport, Nico Menzel driven Porsche, Mirko Bortolotti. Will that 27 Lamborghini be allowed to keep its 5th place on the provisional grid ahead of Marcus Winkelhock, Scherer Sport, PHX Audi? The second of the Lambos for Luca Engstler, number 28, ahead of Valkenhorst Motorsports, Christian Krognes, 35, in a Pro-Am Aston. Then Dan Arrow's 48 Black Falcon team EAE Porsche, ahead of Adam Christodoulou in another Get Speed Mercedes. The rest of the runners, either pros or AM cars, with the exception of Nicky Team down in 12th position. That picture, though, for Valkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martin could get better if 2 of the cars ahead of it on the provisional grid are put to the rear.
Estre around 2 seconds slower than Christopher Hasselmann managed at the start of Q2 yesterday, which was in similar sort of conditions in terms of time of day and in terms of the track clearance. But I think top qualifying, the pressure of that only 1 lap opportunity meant that there was something left in the tank, and I think we saw that at certain parts of the circuit. Estre measured with how far to push the limits in that lap. There is definitely more pace out there, and we might see it now we move into qualifying 3 with those cars that didn't get into top qualifying, trying to prove a point.
Yeah, that session is due to start within the next 5 minutes, in fact. So that session for all of the other cars, plus the SP9s that did not get into top qualifying, all the other cars will be entering.
Yeah, and it's just started now. I can just hear the green flag.
There we go. So bang on time at 22.5, and it's a 65-minute session. Kevin Estre, though, the hero of the day, not for the first time, in the Grello Manthey 911 numbered car that he shares with Thomas Breining, Ayanchin Gubin, and don't forget Patrick Pilet's in that car as well. Cannot wait for the race starts tomorrow at 4 p.m. after a warm-up session at midday. The next time we will see the raciest SP9 cars. RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. So the top qualifying is pretty much decided, with 1 or 2 question marks regarding cars that have potentially earned themselves or had assessed to them red flags. The 27 Lamborghini and the Adam Christodoulou Mercedes, which was already into top qualifying and did not have to necessarily do all of the work in the quick sessions. But will the number 17 Mercedes also be lowered in terms of its starting position because of speeding in the pit lane? But this time the cones are all out, so the marshals have had to be very, very quick about the cones that are on the main straight, delineating the route that you can take through the Hyundai Curva and back onto the Grand Prix track to just do a semi-out lap before heading towards Hanson back. Qualifying 3 for the 53rd edition of the ADAC RAVENOL 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, starting slightly later than planned because of top qualifying having to be put further back in the day after a big accident at the first attempt. We now know that number 16 Scherer Sport Porsche will not be taking part in this year's 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, but that's not done and dusted for Scherer Sport. They do have another car, and they'll be putting all the eggs in the Audi basket for car number 1, which is actually the fastest car in this combined session so far. Christopher Haase, Luca Ludwig, Marcus Winkelhock in the number 1 Audi is the best time to date at 8:10.580. Thank you for joining us then for this 65-minute session with Johnny Palmer, Ben Constanduras and Joe Bradley overseeing matters.
A reminder that we won't see those cars that were in top qualifying in this session, not at least for the first 15 to 20 minutes. The original 1.5 hour session stated that we wouldn't see them for the first 20 minutes, but this session has now been shortened, and it isn't entirely clear in the regulations whether that means the amount of time they are not allowed to be seen has also been shortened. But they have to go through parc fermé conditions for top qualifying, and they have to be scrutineered to some degree.
That's a lot longer than 20 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure how they deal with that, but either way, we will be missing 16 SP9 cars.
The thing is, though, Ben, they are not really going to gain anything from this because they will still form up in the top 16 places on the grid tomorrow at the race start. It's from 17th place really that we are focusing on now. So we've had one qualifying session, two qualifying session, and now this third. It's all put together, and if you're that 8 minutes 10, for instance, the quickest time that we've seen in any of our sessions from the number one, it's kind of irrelevant because that car will start where it finished in top qualifying. However, the rest of the grid from 17th place down over, that can still swap and change around this evening, and whether we will see that, well, that's what we're here for. We're going to be looking out for that.
Yeah, look out for the likes of Kelvin van der Linde in the only BMW M4 that we've got in this session. The 98 car will want to start in that 18th spot, no doubt. We've also got two Ford Mustangs still to set their positions, the 63 and the 64. The 65 was in the previous session. And what about the 54, the dynamic Porsche? Always very strong. Bastien Bus has now got his name corrected, so he's now called Bastien Bus rather than Bus Bastien on the timing screens. And we also have back in our session two cars that have yet to set any times whatsoever. The RPM Racing Tracy Krone Racing Porsche. Yeah. We didn't see them at all yesterday.
Yeah, we haven't, have we?
No, yeah. But they are here, and they are here with their usual lineup of Hamprecht, Krone and Nick Jongson, and they are joined by Patrick Huisman as well, the one-time class winner of Le Mans, brother to Duncan. They are turning their first laps right now, so they add one extra car to the 135 that we've previously seen. Remember Q1, start of Q1, we had a fire for the 97 car. That was taken back to its workshop, worked on overnight, presumably new engine. That was what they thought was the issue. And that has now appeared and done a shakedown lap. So we're up to 136 cars that we've seen, but we're losing the 16 car we think is being completely pulled and withdrawn from the event. So that brings us back to 135. I'm waiting to see if some of the other cars that were on the entry list that we didn't see yesterday make an appearance today.
Yeah, because qualifying 1 and 2 on the combined document, I've got 135 listed, and we're already apparently up to 136 cars on the track. So
because RPM have turned up for the first time.
That'll be them, won't it? Yeah, of course. And there is another RPM racing car, which is the 77... Or is it's the
778, actually, you're right, yes. Yeah. So that's the second of the RPM cars in the SB7 category that is making its first laps. Did we see the other one?
That's a very good question.
I've seen it in the garage.
Yeah. Well, the other car is the treble 7. So the Cup 2 car.
Okay, yes, we have seen that one.
So treble 7 and 778 are both offerings from RPM Racing. There is scope. I mean, it was originally advertised, this event, to have 140 cars. The maximum is 150. You can't go above that under the current licence, but I think we're unlikely to break that record, or get anywhere close to it, should I say. And the story, therefore, of the two previous sessions, of which this is effectively an extension of, is that the number 1 Audi was fastest after Chris Haase set his time last night, sharing with Luca Ludwig and Marcus Winkelhock, who was put out for the top qualifying session. Then you got the 28 at Sportsline Lamborghini, Marco Mappelli, Christian Engelhardt, Luca Engstler, ahead of the 16 Scherer Sport Porsche. Well, it's unlikely that's going to get any more action, but it will still be, or it is still third fastest. And remember, that was the Lawrence Van Toor time, done very close to the end of qualifying 2 on Thursday evening.
To get them into that session that eventually he ended up crashing out of.
Yes, I know. And think about it from a mechanics point of view. Oh. You know, you've already rebuilt the whole of that rear end because of the drive shaft issue, Joe. That did quite a bit of damage to the engine, we're told. You've made it pristine. You've run it in Q2 to make sure that everything is fine. And then Not quite on the opening lap, but the next lap, it's in a box of bits again.
We were in that garage yesterday afternoon, weren't we? And some of those boys looked like they'd grafted pretty hard. It is hot here at the Nürburgring, and they'd put a lot of effort into getting that car out on track. They've had, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact they have no luck, they've had no luck at all, really. They really have been hexed on that number 16, and I really don't know why. They've got a great driver lineup. They're a solid team here. Shearer Sport is, stalwart here at the Nürburgring, and if any team can put a car like that back together, it's Shearer Sport. And I'm hoping to see it in tomorrow's warm-up session. We'll see. When you're ready, guys, I'll give everybody an update on class leaders going into this final hour.
Well, we're about to see a mega lap, I think, from Kelvin van der Linde here. We've got green, 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 purple, green, green sector times. Fastest time from him so far in the 3 qualifying sessions, an 8:16.738. But whilst most of the cars are doing in and out laps on the Grand Prix loop, getting themselves shaken down for this second day of qualifying practice, it's given the opportunity for some of our SP9 cars to find clear track. And we've got Bastian Boos in the number 54 setting purple sectors out there, and we've also got Kelvin van der Linde. So we are going to see a bit of a change at the head of qualifying, which is effectively the grid from 17th downwards in SP9. Just a little update from top qualifying. 2 cars with penalties after that, not having their cars on the ground at the 3-minute signal was both the 48 and the 65, and they have been dropped 3 grid positions. Now, that means that they can actually be dropped behind some of these cars, which allows potentially van der Linde, if he's fastest in the qualifying, to move up a little bit.
So 48 and
65.
65. Which
So Dan Arrow and the Mustang, yes, exactly. Here comes Kelvin van der Linde then, round the final turn onto the Grand Prix start and finish straight with a Porsche ahead of him. And actually, this isn't going to be much of an improvement, is it? 7.5 seconds slower. So in the end, he does go slower than his best lap, I'm afraid.
I have got a little bit of an update on the number 11 Mercedes that we saw grind to a halt there and didn't complete its flying lap in top qualifying. That's the Higher Hartling Fitje Brugge or Brook Mercedes. Team principal Thomas Angera has reported they haven't got the car back. It's still on its way back, but it looks like it's a rear suspension part, right rear suspension breakage. When they get the car back, they'll be able to confirm that. But at the moment, that was what put the car out of top qualifying.
I'm just wondering what the best case scenario might be now for instance, the Rover Racing BMW, because we already know that of those 17 that should have been taking part in top qualifying, the 16's no longer a going concern. The 11 car has been put to the back of the whole group. There are question marks about the 17 Mercedes of Anna Christodoulou and the 27 Lambo of Mirko Bortolotti. Then we've got grid drops for the 48 Porsche and the 65 Mustang. So, I mean, could the Rover BMW be in the top 10 at the end of all this? Potentially, yes. There's reason to push in this session because you just never know where you might start tomorrow's race.
Interestingly, reports from top qualifying from some of our drivers saying and suggesting that it's a little bit too hot at the moment. By the end of the lap, either the circuit feeling greasy or that's diverting the blame away from the tyres slightly overheating come the end of the lap. It is hot. It's possibly the hottest that it's been so far this weekend. It's unusually hot for a Nürburgring 24-hour race, that's for sure. And there's more and more darker pieces of tarmac out there on the Nordschleife, which retains heat much better than the greyer, lighter coloured tarmac. And so by the end of the lap, where we have a lot of resurfacing, tyres starting to go off and car moving around.
I just want to give you Kevin Estre's quote after he got out of the car. There's nothing better than driving a lap of the Nordschleife alone in the Grello with new tyres and new traffic. It's incredible. I'm really looking forward to the weekend. We have great conditions, maybe a little too warm for the tyres, concurring with what Ben's found out, but good for the fans. We'll let Thomas Prying drive tomorrow. I've done my job for the weekend. Well, has he not done his job for the weekend? You couldn't have asked more from Kevin Estre in that number 911.
Putting his feet up, is he?
Yeah, I think so. Not sure a big cigar comes into this guy's an athlete, isn't he?
I'm expecting to see Estre next weekend as well. I imagine.
I imagine so.
Imagine so, but actually I have a feeling not.
I'm not sure he's in the list of the 7, you know, which might
Lawrence
be 8.
Van was,
Lawrence,
because he now isn't.
yeah, well, indeed.
Unfortunately, that 16 car confirmed as withdrawn. I mean, there's still possibilities of change.
Yeah, of course, we're 8 days out from that event, so there's scope for things to change yet. But yeah, there were a number of names that were conspicuous by their absence on the initial entry for the Spa 24 Hours next weekend. Also part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge for this season,
Which this race is, with 12 entries. It's a manufacturer's championship, that, so it's not team by team, it's just manufacturer by manufacturer. Just 4 manufacturers represented in IGTC here, but then it goes to the full complement, of course, at Spa, with the headline SRO event being Spa 24 Hours.
Yeah, unbelievably, Kevin Estre's not on the Spa 24 entry list, nor Lawrence Vantor. Brother Dries is for local team to Spa, Team WRT.
But Dries isn't here.
He's at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, there you go.
Doing the sailing 6 hours in a GTP BMW. So yeah, Dries isn't here, but he will be at Spa.
Actually,
just
what's
over a week's
worse,
time.
doing the 24 Hours of Nürburgring or flying to America, racing for 6 hours, flying back? I think they're probably equally knackering, to be fair, unless you've got yourself a private jet, which Max Verstappen might be able to stretch to, but not necessarily jobbing GT3 driver.
Vantors have a very popular podcast, so I'm told. So that'll be a revenue stream.
Yeah, that will be. Might not be long before we see Hans Hermann enter this race, if his Red Bull contract allows.
Dennis Olsen is one of those drivers that is driving in all 3 races, and he's doing all 3 races in the same car, because of course he's a Ford contracted driver, and he's therefore in the Mustang at Le Mans, Mustang here, and Mustang at Spa.
Not the same chassis, though.
I imagine not.
Yeah.
He might be tied, but I'm not sure the same car could do all 3. But it would be interesting to note those drivers that are using the same chassis versus those drivers that are using different cars. Because of course Kevin Estre last weekend in a hypercar, this weekend in a GT3 car, and they do run to different regulations. A Le Mans GT3 car and a Nürburgring 24-hour GT3 car and a Spa 24-hour GT3 car have 3 different sets of balance of performance regulations to run to. So yes, it's the same car. You might be on different tyres, because of course Goodyear for Le Mans, here more open, and then Pirelli's definitely at Spa. And then you've got, so that, you know, it's not just transferring your skills across the 3 and easy peasy. There is lots to adjust to.
Completely different car, I would imagine, for Le Mans, which is all about straight line speed.
Also, yeah.
And very little handling through the twisty bits.
Talking of Olsen, he's got some purple sectors on our timing screen, and we might see that Ford number 64 improve its lap time. We're not. Our TV director is picking out some of the more unusual cars to spot, where we're looking at the Subaru WRX right now. We were looking at a couple of old BMWs before. Just the one 4-wheel drive Subaru developed specifically for the Nürburgring 24 Hours here. And it's the 3-box looking hatchback, rather than this car mainly built as a 2-box after the more familiar rally cars that we've seen over the years. And again, it's another of those Japanese teams coming over and racing at Le Mans.
I think that's actually leading its class.
It's only got
Number
88.
only 2
cars in the
I'm gonna
class.
confirm that. I'm just loading up the data now. From the for our class leaders, and we'll have a bit of a rundown. 47, just over 47 minutes remaining in this session. So usually we would be saying that's plenty of time, but it's not really when you're at the Nürburgring. Recalibrate the mind. It's a very, very long lap here. Totally different to any racetrack anywhere in the world.
And Olsen does improve his lap time, so he goes now up to 2nd position of those not qualified yet. So that would, it's behind the Pro Sport Aston Martin by 0.4 of a second. But that is an improvement for Dennis Olsen, and the first improvement for the SP9 cars, at least in this session.
And Stephen Pallet's at the wheel of the 37 Pro Sport Racing Aston. That's the green and orange car, if you spot it around the racetrack. It was actually a Marek Bachmann time from yesterday, 8:14.6, which was nearly enough to get it into the 5, wasn't it? And then at the last moment, Vanthoor did his time in the 16 Porsche, pushing the 37 car out. But they might feel like they're a little cruelly treated because it was just over a tenth of a second in it.
Well, they're thinking, Johnny, just how important is it in a 24-hour race around the Nürburgring? And they've got to start thinking about how they're going to address their race. And forget qualifying. Yes, get as far up the grid as they possibly can. They know they've got the pace. That lap time that they can bring from qualifying to, arguably, in probably the best setting last night as the sun went down. The track was cool, the air was thick. Whether we get any laps that match that period of that qualifying 2 session, I find that very doubtful. Absolutely. And so that team now, just missing out top qualifying, they are asking themselves that, well, you know what, just how important is it in a 24-hour race? As long as we've got our race heads on and we use the strategy-wise, we can just pick our way slowly through the field ahead of us because they know they've got the pace.
It's very easy from a team perspective to switch that political narrative very quickly, isn't it? You know, you get pole position, oh yeah, really, really important for us to have track position.
Absolutely.
And if you miss out on top qualifying, oh no, that's fine, because it was never going to have an impact on the result. It's a 24-hour race, we focus on that instead.
It's how to motivate the team as well. It's a team sport, this. It's not necessarily all about the drivers. You've got a crew of mechanics and team personnel that you have to keep motivated throughout the weekend. 24-hour racing is very tiring. You've got to keep them motivated, so you've got to find a positive out of the negative. The negative being, we didn't make top qualifying. However, right guys, we're going to focus on the race now because we're still in with a chance. We know we've got race pace, we know we've got good lap pace, so that's what's going to bring us a good result at the end of, you know, when we get to the checkered flag time on Sunday afternoon. That's how you motivate the team. Forget the negatives, think about the positives.
May I draw your attention to the onboard in which we are running at the moment? We're on board with the Subaru WRX, which is from Subaru Technica, which is the Japanese arm. Just have a listen to the gear changes.
Yeah, that is.
Listen to the gear changes. Oh, we're on a back straight now, so we're not going to get one. But you may have noticed, I thought somebody was typing in the back of. There we go. There's another one.
That's the paddle shift, the click.
Yeah,
the switch.
Sounds like a sim, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. You know what? It actually is. It's just a micro switch.
Well, yes.
Paddle clicks a switch. That sends a signal to the actuator in the gearbox. It changes the gear.
I've never had such clarity from the gear change clicking.
Let's listen to that again, Ben.
It is exactly like when you're standing at a sim racing competition and you haven't got the sound of the engines because they're going into the headphones of the drivers in the sims, but all you can hear is the pedals going blip, blop, blip, and the clicking of the gears. Beautiful, obviously very, very technically perfect inside that car, but we've run on board with it for the last good 10 minutes or so, and that was just being drawn into the... I thought you were typing, Johnny.
I'm always typing.
Here we go again. Oh, we're not sticking with it, but...
But if it does come on there, because, you know, I'm a geek as well.
It's got Carlo Van Dam, Kota Sasaki from Super GT, and Tim Schrick. Renato Kubo is in that car, so they're all Super GT.
Carlo Van Dam?
Yeah, Super GT.
He should be an international spy with a name like Carlo Van Dam.
And he is actually a
factory driver,
R&D development driver for Subaru Technica, and based himself out in Japan. So this is another Super GT group of drivers coming over and participating at the Nordschleife. As we see with so many, there's so many teams here that have come over from those championships and from Asia to race here this weekend.
They are currently the fastest car in SP4T. I think we said there are 2 cars. It shares that class with a Porsche 718 Cayman of HY Racing Andalusia Circuit. Bruno Barbaro, Jacques Derain, Olivier Mutens and Fabrice Raker in the number 69 Porsche. 2 cars in SP4T, currently being led by that Subaru Technica International, car number 88.
And I think the reason for that is that that might be one of those cars we've not seen out, because looking at the entry list, looking at the timing screen, there is no other SP4Ts that are set a time. So
check that again, it's easy to miss.
We do know
it's
that
underneath the 88.
We're missing 5 cars from the original entry list on our timing screens, and that could be one.
Cup 2, the class leader of Cup 2 is the number 948. That's the 48 Losh Motorsport by Black Falcon. The AT2 class is being led by the number 644 Max Cruz Racing. SP Pro, that's being led by the number 347 Vittorio Tyres with Ring Racing entry. Door Motorsport, the number 59 leads SP8T. AT3, that's the number 19 of Max Cruz Racing. And TCR, Hyundai Motorsport Target Competition, the number 830 leads that. The number 962, the W&S Motorsport entry, leads Cup 3. SP10 is the 111 numbered SR Motorsport by Schnitzlem. And then we've got BSL Racing's number 77 leading the SP7 class. SP2T, that's the Toyota Gazoo Rookie Racing, entry number 109. The BMW M240i class is being led by the number 650, the Adrenaline Motorsport Team Manhattan Wales. SP3T is being led by Hyundai Motorsport Target Competitions 303 entry. And then the V6 class, car 414, no team name, which is the thing I love about the Nürburgring 24 hours. And then the last of our classes to mention, the VT2 Hecker class, that is the number 520 Toyo Tyres with Ring Racing entry.
And that is another of those Japanese groups of drivers. It's not an Japanese team, it's actually entered as a German team. But Giuliano Alesi is part of that team, the son of Jean, who's been racing out in Super GT and Super Formula. Katsuto Kotaka is another Toyota Gazoo Racing works driver in Super GT. Miki Koyama is a works driver in Super GT and Super Formula. She, best known in the W Series as well. And Yuichi Nakayama, another Super GT Toyota Gazoo Racing works driver. So although it's called Toyota Tyres with Ring Racing, it is very much part of that Toyota GR 4 cars, works cars that are basically here, and showing that Mr. Toyota loves the Nürburgring 24 hours so much that he's brought his son to come racing here.
And underneath that Gazoo Racing rookie team, if you peel back that sticker, it's KCMG running those cars, Matt Hausman's team.
I noticed there is a lot of Toyota Japan members in that team. It's definitely a half and half.
It's definitely a collaboration.
Yeah.
I would imagine that the race strategy might be being looked at by KCMG because they have the experience of, putting a car through a race and when is the best time to pit. Because in the SP9 category, when we get into the meat of the race, you're looking at 8 laps for each of the GT3 cars. It can be a lot better for some of the lower category cars. SP7, which is still a thing here, which is the old class where all the Porsche Carrera Cup cars used to go into. That today is Cup 2, but there's still room for the older iterations of a Carrera Cup car in SP7, and they can go a little further on their fuel mileage. Joe mentioned the V6 category. That's got nothing to do with V6 engines. It's for production cars with an engine capacity between 3 and 3.5 litre. And the V5, which is for slightly smaller engines, 2.5 to 3 litre, has now got a new name at the top of the shop, I noticed. The V5 car now topped, or V5 class, now topped by the Porsche Cayman CQ11 of Mirko Buamish, who drives the 440 car. So, again, this session, what remains of it, so crucial for those classes further down the order. You'll already know which start group you're going to be in. And for the majority of the lower class cars, that's either in Startgruppe 2 or 3. And they're separated by a couple of minutes. So we have 3 individual race starts tomorrow from 4 o'clock, but that'll extend to about 4 or 5 minutes past 4. And the timing systems have to do very, very clever things because, when you're in start group 3, you're starting your race 4 or 5 minutes behind the SP9 front runners, and therefore, effectively, you've already lost the best part of 5 or 6 minutes on those. But everything is taken into account, comparing your start time to the completion of your first lap.
I like the fan favourite. It's got to be the SP3T class, hasn't it? 6 cars. What a lovely little mix. We've got the RSR Beetle. The White Angel for Fly and Help is the name of the team. 4 drivers in that one, and that is the class which, of course, has the Dacia Logan in. Ollis Garage Racing is the entry that's brought the Dacia along, and it's not even arguable that that is the slowest car out there on the track, as far as I'm aware. It also shares Hyundai Elantra N Cup entry with Hyundai Motorsport, FK Performance Motorsport with the BMW M2, and then we've got a Mini Cooper and a Volkswagen Golf GTI.
To remind you of what happened yesterday with the number 97, the older Cup car. So this is a 997 Cup car which caught fire. We eventually settled on a rear left brake binding, kind of similar to what happened to the 33 Volker Motorsport Porsche on the opening lap of its top qualifying session. But that got so hot, it resulted in a fire in the back of that Porsche, and of course they've been working on it to try and fix it in time for ideally this session to get just some running in it. But that fire didn't happen today, it happened during qualifying 1, and yes, the Charles-driven Porsche is now out there on the track. So this is the first laps it will have done in any of the qualifying sessions, but that is testament to the hard work of that crew with actually no name. So we can't pay tribute to them in that respect, but we know precisely who they are with their SP7 number 97.
Those guys.
Just those guys.
Yeah.
It's good enough.
You mentioned about the Dacia's lap time. Fastest lap time for the Dacia Logan, which is 136th fastest and therefore slowest, is an 11 minutes 07. That compares to its nearest rival, which has done 9 laps. It's a BMW 325i of 10 minutes and 59 seconds.
But it's going quicker, Ben. It's going quicker every lap.
Okay.
And that 11 minutes 7.1 is its last lap by. So it is picking up speed.
Good. It wasn't really being driven very fast yesterday when we found it. But,
just keeping out of everyone's way.
Yeah, it does look like it's now on the racing line of such, and it looks to be hustling on, I think you would describe it as. And perhaps with not too much, we haven't got a lot of SP9 cars on track to really hassle it, so it can focus perhaps a little more and just going fast on its own and not getting out of the way of people.
Those drivers undoubtedly are in that car doing exactly that. They are not interested in where anyone else is, even in their class. Yeah, if they're going to come through, it'll be attrition because of the pace, the lack or lack thereof. They're just enjoying the drive and enjoying being part of this event. It's, you know, there are some people out there, I think you mentioned it, Johnny, about the individual rock festivals that we've got going on from individuals out there in the campsites. I'm pretty sure if you walked up to some of them and said, who do you think's going to win the race? They'd reply, what race? I'm pretty sure it's a beer and music festival to some.
I thought you were going to say the Dacia Logan, because so many people would
That's
absolutely love that.
It's a lot of beer.
But it's now heading down the Döttinger and is going to get swallowed up by one of the middle-order cars, let's say. But the Logan, which has had a fair bit of work done to it, I think it's fair to say. I mean, that's full race suspension from a Renault Megane, is it? And
yeah, it's got a Renault Megane RS turbo engine in it. It looks like it's done a few miles just visually when you look under the bonnet. But yeah, I mean, it might look like a Dacia Logan that you see at in the supermarket car park, but up close, it's very, very modified.
Yeah. And it's actually at least the second car that they've been through, because remember, what was it, 3 years ago? There was a big crash in the middle of the night where, unfortunately, the Logan was in the wrong place at the wrong time as the SP9 scrap descended upon it in the darkness. And sadly, one of those SP9 cars tripped over the Dacia Logan and it ended up heavily in the wall and out of the race.
And redesigned.
Massively so,
yeah.
Not as it left the factory.
It was significantly shortened, and I think that whole chassis got binned, didn't it? This is a completely start afresh. Is the McLaren Artura going past the Dacia Logan? We haven't spoken too much about that car, but it is a car that is brand new to the Nürburgring 24 Hours. The Artura Trophy is a one-make trophy introduced by McLaren 2 years ago in Europe and then this year in America, and started to see those cars branch away from that one-make championship and get used in things like this, where there is always a place for any racing car. Will find a class for you to slot in. Dur Motorsport are running that car. Timo Glock should have been in it, but unfortunately having a medical procedure has prevented him from taking the start, so he has been replaced. And actually, they weren't even going to run the Artura. They were going to run in GT3 in a McLaren to add an extra brand to that GT3 entry list, but unfortunately they were not quite ready with the GT3 car, so they reverted back to the Artura. It's actually the fastest car on the Dottingerhoek. It can do about 285, 290 clicks, whereas everybody else seems to be a little bit slower. Another very fast car along the Dottingerhoek, equal to the GT3 cars, is the GTI Celebration Volkswagen Golf that has Johan Kristoffersen, the World Rallycross driver, aboard it. And this is a brand new car that has been built for the 24 hours based upon a development of the TCR car from a couple of years ago, which eventually got all the money pulled from it and it just became a 24 hours car. But that is an improvement on that other car, and it is a very fast machine. Nicola Otto bringing the car into the pits right now and sits 45th overall, fastest in 83.
Yeah,
ATP.
Nico Otto, I think, has been moved across within Max Cruiser. On the initial entry list, he wasn't due to be driving that number 19 Golf. I think it was in a 76 car, but they've clearly got a lot of drivers that maybe they feel are going to fit together better in different machinery. So a late-ish adjustment. He's certainly not the only one.
But they've got 3 cars in 83, Max Cruz Racing. Max Cruz being a footballer, very famous German footballer. I don't know anything about football, so I can't tell you anything more than what it says on his Wikipedia page, which is an attacking midfielder or forward.
You have no idea what that means, do you?
Doesn't have 4 wheels.
It's his job to score.
Okay, cool.
Score the goals.
And he's here, and he's got his name behind, I think, 4 cars, 3 of them in the 83 category, which is the alternatives fuel, one of the alternative fuel categories, but he is in the number 10 on my entry list with a load of Swiss drivers. We've got the 19, and then the 76 is where you find Benjamin Luchner and Johan Kristoffersen, which is that 50-year anniversary celebration car. And something happening very exciting in the Boulevard today with regards to VW Golf GTI. I think they're launching an anniversary edition road car as well.
Big news, big, massive news.
Oh, yes.
The Dacia isn't slowest. It's just put in a 10 minutes 57.6 and has gone ahead of the number 101 BMW 325i. We haven't got a team name. Its driver is Velka, and it's gone quicker by a couple of seconds, so it's off the bottom of the screens. It's still running 7th in the SP3T class, but it's underneath 11 minutes. I told you it was going quicker, didn't I, Ben?
Yes, and the 101 car on my entry list is the E-Felkind or Felkind Racing, which is in its own category of BMW 325. It's almost a renter seat category, that one, with 2 Swedes, a Japanese, and then Carsten Velka also in that car. Michael Schrey is in the second of those cars. Where have I seen Michael Schrey before?
24H series, Creventic?
Probably. That's where you find most of those.
That's generally the answer to all those questions, I find. It's a bit like Peter Bonk and the Bonk brothers, always in Creventic as well. But they're here this weekend with Bonk Motorsport, both by title but also running other cars within the entry. So there's something by Bonk Motorsport.
Is Martin Kroll here?
Is Martin Kroll here? Is a great question.
I did see, he did like a picture of the Bonk BMW on my Facebook, but I haven't seen his name on any of the entry lists. I haven't come across his name, I should say.
Now checking in with TCR, the 830. This is actually a legitimate TCR entry. There are 2 Hyundai Motorsport Works cars. We've got Works press officers from America and Europe in the press room. They are taking it incredibly seriously. And the 830 is Mark Basseng, Christa Jons and Manuel Lauk aboard that car right now.
No slouches, those guys, are they?
But they are in competition with the Americans. So we've got Target running the European car, and then we have Brian Herter running, in theory, the American car, even though they're both run under the same Hyundai Motorsport N banner. The Elantra is a car you can't buy in Europe. It is an American and Asian model. but took over from the I-30 in the world of
Basically
TCR.
the saloon, isn't it? It's the,
Yeah,
it's
3-box.
a saloon.
Yeah. And in the 813 out on circuit right now is Robert Wickens, which is great to have him. He missed last year, didn't he? Because he crashed in the qualifying race. So was that 2 years ago?
It feels like 2 years ago.
Was it? Okay.
But it was into Tiergarten, and the car actually cleared the barrier, so it went over the catch fencing there. And I remember Bruce Jones and I were commentating on that NLS race and thought, where on earth has the car ended up? And we realised it was then actually with the marshals, but beyond the circuit perimeter. Scary accident, especially considering Robert, for understandable reasons, drives that car with the hand controls. It was then tricky to extricate him in a safe way. So, yeah, there was a concern that he would race again. Would he race again? But he's back, like you say, eager for the next challenge, and has already been in Nürburgring qualifying action last month.
So Wickens is 57th overall, second in TCR, and quite a few, 6-7 positions behind Manuel Lauck, who is leading the TCR category. What's the difference in time between those two? 8:56 plays a 9 minutes. So 4 and a bit seconds for Robert to find as he enters the pits, in fact. I mean, this is what I love about this. Every time the director showed us a new car, you go, oh, there's another interesting person to talk to.
That's
or
right.
talk about.
Too right. I mean, yeah, I'm used to getting into this race about 22 or 23 hours in and spotting a car for the first time.
Well, yes.
Because, you know, I always think if we've had a few retirements, they just chuck a few out again from the paddock to flesh out the entry. No, we don't need to do that.
I have to say, I'm loving the director's and the producer's opinion of this session. We're not really seeing very many SP9 cars, and we are flicking around the order and picking up all of the interesting liveries and interesting stories, and doing a great job of showing us the full field, because if you watch Le Mans 24 Hours, you may have thought there were only 12 cars in it, thanks to the choices that television are making. But you can't get away from what this Nürburgring 24 Hours is, and it is ultimately the ultimate amateur endurance race.
It's the epitome of multi-class racing, isn't it? Because the speed of the Dacia in comparison to any of the GT3 cars is absolutely massive. And, you know, you could argue putting them on a track like the Nürburgring Nordschleife is completely and utterly crazy and lacking in imagination, but it works. It works. It has jeopardy. It certainly has danger, as we've seen this afternoon, and that was nothing to do with the fact that we have multi-class racing. That's just the speed of the track. But it is a fascinating concept to see the difference in all of our classes, using all different types of fuel and technologies as well, which undoubtedly we'll be able to go into in more depth over the weekend. But quite fascinating way of going racing here. And then just to add the complexity of the rules that we have here for the N24, it's got a lot of depth, this event.
Yeah, I mean, you're alluding to the fact that because of the conventional way that the cars are fueled in pit lane, you're sharing a fuel pump. It's pistol grip triggers like you might find in a supermarket as well. So no high-performance Formula One type rig. And because you can never guarantee the consistent fuel flow up and down pit lane, actually every single pit stop for the SP9s and for some of the lower classes, I believe, are determined by a minimum pit stop reference time. But that alters according to how many laps you've just done in the stint. So you might have a 5-lap stint, 6, 7, maximum of 8-lap stint, and the longer you've been out on track just now, then you pit, the longer the pit stop's got to be, which serves to equalise the point where you've got to take on fuel. But there's also a lot of kind of kicking around waiting for the clock to tick by, and the mechanics are waiting, and then the car is waved out. And that's not stationary time, that's from pit in to pit out. Very easy to misjudge that when you're trying to preserve tenths, if not hundreds of seconds.
And the alternative fuels cars have a separate area where they pit, which is the more conventional fuel station, let's say at the top end of pit lane, because of course they can't take on the usual racing fuel because they are alternatively fueled. It does limit the amount of alternative fuel cars we can have entered into the Nürburgring 24 Hours because of the space involved in that pit area. So this year we have 11 alternative fuel cars, and they aren't all the same alternative fuel as well. Right. They've all got different. We'll go into that later because there's quite a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we've got a lot of talking to do, and that's one of the subjects if you're a technical geek like I am, that we enjoy to talk about. We've got some information coming in about a friend of Radio Show Limited, Peter Kate. He's in the 959 and he's not in the official order because that was a very late deal. He's in the 959 SRS Team Sorg Rennsport entry. It's a 718 Cayman GT3 RS. Sharing the car with Heiko Eichenberg, Harley Horton and Bjorn Simon. Well, I say, sorry, Peter, to highlight this. You've had a bit of a spin at the Sabine Schmidt curver, and harmless spin continued on his way. But Peter there, Peter was a former teammate of John Hindhaugh as well, wasn't he? Was Peter in that Aston at quarter?
He was.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Yeah, I thought so. So that's another accolade, isn't it? Teammate of Hindhaugh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
SP7 has got a new fastest lap time, a new class leader. My problem is, Johnny, that it's the 909, and for some reason that doesn't exist on my entry list. So
excellent.
It's got Ertl in it, and he set the best time of an 8:49.9. But when I look at SP7, 909 does not exist.
Right, let me give you a bit of news on that. So it's the Ertl family. So what we can't tell you is whether it's Lucas, Maximilian or Stefan, but they're all due to drive along with Matthias Bendorf. And that is an SP7 Porsche, so a little bit like in the same class as the Porsche that caught fire yesterday, only it's a 991 iteration of the GT3 Cup car.
Now, last night there was a family team, talking of family teams, that had one of their drivers penalised and disqualified from the event. Remind me of that little story.
Yeah, well, Joe and I went down to meet a number of different people actually on Wednesday, and I was intrigued by the Binkowska family because 3 drivers in the SRS Team Sorg Rennsport 979 Porsche Cayman sharing with Alex Muller, and it's actually Alex Muller's car. Now, Dietmar Binkowska, who is the dad of otherwise a daughter and son, who have been watching Dietmar and their dad race in the 24 hours for many, many years. And Dietmar reckoned about 20 years ago, he said to the young kids, "Oh, one day, wouldn't it be great to do this race together as a family?" Thinking at the time, they'll just forget about that. It's a nice little thing to throw out.
20 years ago, they'll have been pretty small kids as well.
They would have been. I was going to say toddlers, but slightly older.
Yeah.
So what, 5, 6 years old?
Maybe, yeah.
Watching Daddy go and race around the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and his hope was, oh yeah, they'll just forget about that. And they'll move on to something that costs a lot less money. Anyway, they didn't forget, conveniently, and David and Annalena, Dietmar's kids, have actually raced, I think, with him in 4-hour races, but they've never done a 24-hour race before. This weekend was meant to be their first attempt at the 24-hour race. However, Annalena was in the car yesterday. I'm not sure whether it was the morning or rather the afternoon or the evening session, but through several different marshal posts, she was pinged at doing much higher speed than she should have been doing through code 60s, through code 120s. And because it was about 5 sectors or 5 marshal posts in a row, she's actually been banned from the event this year. And I'm wondering whether she might even have to get a license reissued through qualification races again. What I haven't done is gone down to the team to find out what their plan is now, because obviously Alex Muller will want to race, so will Dietmar and David. So can they find a 4th driver?
They can do it with 3.
They could do it with 3, but that would be brave.
Yeah, well,
for David's first attempt.
Yeah, they can do it with 3, and it just means they're a little bit more seat time. It is going to be a little more strenuous, but we see there's quite a few entries with only 3 drivers this year, isn't there?
Yeah, but they're tending to be more of the pro-type cars.
We haven't seen that car out today. There's actually quite a few cars that haven't taken part in this session, and that number 979 is one of them. So sitting out qualifying 3. You talk about SRS Team Sorg Rennsport that seem to have a couple of those family teams. They're running 8 cars across the entry. I reckon that's probably the busiest of the teams. There's quite a few teams out there. Best Racing, for instance, is another team that got multiple cars, and Max Kreuzer we've already spoken about with at least 4. But at 8, I think SRS Team Sorg Rennsport are the most busy.
The only one that would compare, but I don't think beat it, is Adrenaline Motorsport, Team Manhattan Wheels, who are, now let me just check my very newly bought book on last year's Nürburgring. I've been waiting for an opportunity to use this.
This is very old-fashioned, Johnny, that you're actually
I'm using
going
a
to
book.
a book.
I know.
Made from paper.
Dive into my library.
It's only one book, so it's a growing library. And last year, for the 7th consecutive time, the champions of the Nürburgring Langstrecke series were Adrenaline Motorsport team. And they're very much a arrive and drive. You know, that you organise an opportunity with the team, a customer team. Yeah, so they bring the cars here. They provide you with a seat.
You can buy a drive.
And you can buy a drive. And team principal Matthias Unger overseeing matters at Adrenaline Motorsport team, who are right at the end of pit lane, pit out. And they've probably got, well, at least 2 garages, maybe 3, because of the amount of cars. But yes, I reckon there's 8 entries from Adrenaline Motorsport, 8 entries from Zorg Rennsport. So they're level pegging as far as that's concerned. Each one will be trying to outdo one another within their own subcategories tomorrow and the day after.
And that's what this race is about also. It's not, all right, we tend to focus on the front of the field and the SB9, and we've just done top qualifying. But there's all sorts of, dare I say it, my cliche, Johnny, soap operas behind those garage doors. There were shared soap operas, and there's inter-team rivalry. There's certainly inter-class rivalry. There'll be, you know, you find cars that you can compete with out there in whatever class you're in, and there'll be lots of races within this race, of course, that we will not necessarily know anything about, because it's private little battles that are going on there within teams. And if you know of any, if you know anyone's racing here, and you know of any inter-team rivalry, brother against sister, father and son, father and daughter, then, you know, fire us a message in and give us a bit of insight of what soap operas are indeed going on behind those garage doors.
It'll be the garage doors, and it'll be the campsites where the main stories will be run.
I'd dread to think.
There'll be a lot of stories, especially the heat in those campsites this weekend. Will require you, as it did a couple of years ago at my wedding, to drink a lot of beer, because it keeps you hydrated-ish. And I imagine the beer consumption in the campsites are going to be a lot more than even last year, where it was cold and raining.
Yeah, what's incredible about this event is we're going to see on the TV cameras, will invariably pick up on a lot of the atmosphere here. And you see structures made out of bits of scaffolding, bits of wood. You've got people carrying literally 3-piece suites into the woods, where they'll set up on a piece of wooden platform, and it'll be there. But by Sunday evening, all of those structures, all of that rubbish, all of that litter will be completely and utterly removed. And by Monday morning, by Monday afternoon, it will be hard to think that all of these people have actually been out there around this track. It's incredible discipline and commendable.
We worked out the reason why this event is not being held on Ascension Day this year, because usually it's either Ascension Day or Corpus Christi Day. Ascension Day is a national holiday. Corpus Christi is a regional holiday, and not all the German regions partake in Corpus Christi, although they do in Ascension Day. Ascension Day this year was the 9th of June. It relies upon when Easter falls, and Google how Easter is decided, because that is a complicated equation. But that was
Rockham. The moon or something, isn't it?
Don't get me started. We'll do that in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
But that is due to the 2 weeks ago was Rockham Ring here. A massive rock festival, which makes far more money, would you believe, than any motorsport event at the Nürburgring.
That's not surprising.
And so they couldn't hold the race on that weekend. That is why it's Corpus Christi weekend. That's why it's fallen at this weekend. And when it was planned 3 or 4 years ago, they would have known that it would be close proximity to Le Mans, but they wouldn't have known about the Spa 24 Hours, because at that time, that was at the end of July, before Formula One went and bullied their way into taking that date. So it has ended up with this very unusual situation whereby we have 3 24-hour races in 3 weekends, and 2 24-hour races within about 100 kilometres of each other in 2 weekends as well.
Yeah.
By the way, there's only about 75 cars that have taken part in this session. So a good opportunity if you want to go and improve your lap time and improve your qualifying position to do so, because we've had over an hour's worth of running, although he says that just as a yellow flag comes out on circuit. Yeah, only half the cars have been seen.
Well, those 50 or so plus cars that haven't needed to go out in Q3, just kind of, that's the indication that they're all ready to go. They are ready for race weekend, and they're ready to get things underway at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon for the race start here. The green flag will fly, and there is, you know, they're not necessarily wanting to wear their cars out, put any more miles on the engines, the gearboxes. Some of our competitors are running at budgets, reduced budgets, and there's all sorts of reasons. And if everybody's got experience, if all of your drivers have got experience here, then, you know, you are just going to wear your car out by going round and round, and suspension components, shock absorbers, etc., etc. You know, just park it up, enjoy the sunshine, and then get ready to go racing tomorrow.
We have 11 minutes remaining of the session. We still have one of the last SP9 cars in Dynamic Motorsport Porsche, number 54. That's 15th position on our timing screen, but it will start down in 27th or so. It's got 6 or 7 SP9 cars ahead of it. Surely now is an opportunity to go out there and improve that grid position. And I would say the same for Rover Racing, BMW and Kelvin van der Linde, because they're pretty much at the tail of the SP9 field, and they are the only BMW, and surely there'll be a phone call from BMW headquarters saying, go on, just get a little bit higher up the grid, because they missed out on top qualifying. They are the only car representing the German brand, the most successful brand here at the Nürburgring 24 Hours, with 20 wins overall, and they're kind of inconspicuous and nowhere at the moment.
Manuel Lauck has just done the fastest TCR time of the 3 sessions. Remember, they're all bolted together to produce a combined effort. 8:52.9 takes Lauck. Now, what I didn't track was whether he's actually gone ahead into provisional pole.
No.
He was already ahead of 8:31.
Yeah.
Fine. So that's just cemented his place ahead of Bryson Morris, the American. I had a little word with Bryson yesterday. He was having a catch-up with Nick Johnson, who's in the Tracy Crone RPM racing car, and also Samantha Tan was having a chat in the press room. It's a nice time actually of the weekend when the drivers briefing assembles in the big media centre that is here at the Nürburgring. There's a German language drivers briefing, there's then an English language drivers briefing. I think that's about it, so you better hope that you can speak one or the other. But it's also a good little social time as well to see drivers that maybe you haven't seen for a good year or so. Hearing in the background the 110 Toyota Supra driven by Naoya Gamu. Gamu part of that Toyota Gazoo rookie racing entry with the 2 awesome GR Yaris's. But that's the 3rd car in their stable that runs in SP8T. And Gamu is currently 3rd fastest in SP8T behind the Door Motorsport McLaren Artura.
That TCR time of Manuel Lauck, just a fraction behind the number 320, 46th position. In the AT2 category, we've got Max Cruz in AT2, we've got Manthey in AT2, and we've got 4 Motors, which is the 320. And one of those drivers, well, it says Bonk on my timing screen. I've got no idea who Mr. Bonk is because he's not on my entry list. But we do have Smuddo in that car. Michael Bernd Schmuddo Schmidt, who is a German rapper for the group Die Francesken Wehr. And he has been a rapper for over 30 years. And he is driving the 320. So not in it at the moment, but presumably will take over from Bonk at some point. It's not Mr. Bonk, as we know from Bonk Motorsport, because I don't think it's anything to do with him. But Smuddo is part of that. Another one, you know, we just dug in and found another interesting character. Not somebody we would know in the UK, but if you are a resident of Germany, then you may well have heard of Die Francesken Wehr. And I probably said that wrong.
You probably have.
Yeah.
I've got his latest album, actually. I'll let you listen to it. Samantha Tan, you mentioned, Johnny. She's in a Mini. I mean, we're familiar with Samantha in 24H series.
Is that the Bulldog Racing Mini? I think there's only one in the race.
That's one, yeah.
I think
Oh,
so.
no.
Now then, that's the Toyota GR Supra GT4 or the car 110, the 110. Just see seeing if we can hear any.
Yeah, they were talking just, but now he's powered the engine off.
That's Naoya Gamu at the wheel of the car. Now that's just slowed down and pulled off to driver's right. I'm just trying to get the location on that.
It's either the run towards Brunchen or Franzgarten.
Schwalbenschwanz.
Schwalbenschwanz. That one.
Is it?
Yes, it is. The run up to Schwalbenschwanz. Corner of the tracker, Johnny.
Okay.
That's he's got moving again, I believe.
So after Schwalbenschwanz?
No,
just before Gaudenkopf?
just through the right-hand sweeps.
That's Schwalbenschwanz now.
Now at Schwalbenschwanz.
Okay.
Just coming through the left-hander and then the Kleine Carousel. He's got moving again very slowly, but he is now at the Kleine Carousel. So whether he clearly done a Control-Alt-Delete reset there. What do we mean by that? You hear us talking about a Control-Alt-Delete. Well, it's basically you just switch everything off, and you've got a myriad of switches. Just checking, you disconnect fuses and disconnect the ECU. You switch everything down, then you switch it all back on again. It's just like your computer or your phone. It works again.
Well, it's a reference to the olden days of computers. For those of you who are millennials, if I said that right, Control-Alt-Delete was how you used to reset a Microsoft software, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if you still need to do it.
Well, it still brings up the thing called the task manager.
Okay.
And then you can close whatever program is having a bit of a mare.
All right, so it's still a thing.
I think, yeah. On Windows devices.
You know, when you mention floppy disks to people or CDs,
no.
they go.
I mean, even I haven't got a clue about floppy disks. When did they? When were they a
come
thing?
on,
That was the 90s, wasn't it?
Floppy. You've played with a floppy disk in your time.
Might have done. But yeah, Control-Alt-Delete. There aren't actually any keyboards in these cars, I don't think. But turn everything off, restart it, and then hopefully, as you burst the kernel into life, it's this little thing called a kernel in a Windows device, and you have to wake it up, and then
Not a kernel as in army kernel.
not as in the fried chicken guy. No.
Wake up, Colonel.
I've got some information for you, Ben. How did you pronounce that rapper's name?
Smuddo.
Smudo. Right.
Smudo.
Smudo. And that's from Sebastian Meyer.
Yeah.
Seb, our cameraman for Creventic events.
Smudo.
He's here. He's here and he's staying at Centre Park.
He's the kind of person that would listen to Smudo, isn't he?
I don't know. We're going to find out because he's not far from us.
He's staying in Centre Parks as well.
He's just signed up for the table tennis tournament tonight.
Go to the petting zoo in the morning.
Yes. I'm going to milk a goat.
Of course I said it wrong.
Yeah.
Of course I said it wrong.
Well, you're not
you would have
gonna-
said it right.
I don't know if I would. Well, I've got a northern accent.
Your northern
I suppose.
accent lends itself.
Smudo.
Smudo.
Perfect.
Big northern accent, lads.
Nico Bastian's brought the 37 car into the pit lane. That might have happened a little while ago. And Frank Stippler as well, who has been out in this session, as in running in this session. But the 64 car is going to finish, well, as things stand, 7th fastest. I realise we've still got just under 4 minutes to go.
There was a really good lap, actually, from the 84 machine with Norbert Siedler aboard that car. Unfortunately, caught that yellow flag. So it was looking green, 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 green right to the end of the lap. And he had to back out and didn't improve from 10th position in our overall standings. Kelvin van der Linde is now out. Bastian Boos is now out. Is anybody else driving that BMW? All I've seen is Kelvin van der Linde.
Yeah, we have.
It's like the rest of them haven't turned up yet. But he's doing the legwork, and as we suggested, 3 minutes now remaining, an opportunity to change your grid position perhaps. The top two in SP9 that are allowed out, which have not been part of top qualifying, they are in the pits, so they are not going to improve. And that is the Pro Sport Aston Martin, that time set yesterday, and the 64 of Dennis Olsen was the start of this session where he improved his time up to 2nd SP9. But the sound you can hear is the sole BMW of Farfus, Krohn, Marcello and van der Linde. I definitely haven't seen any of those other drivers driving that car. And he is right in the middle of the lap. How's it looking?
Yeah, he's not really doing anything. He hasn't put a green sector time in yet. He's just, I think he's just gathering a bit of tyre data. He's not really on it at all. He's not going to improve on his 8 minutes 16.7.
Well, the other thing is, I reckon this is an out lap. So
could well be.
he's from the pit lane anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he's gearing up for one last push with.
Well, yeah, but is he going to get back to the line in time?
Let me just get a locator on it.
Yeah, it should be okay because he's at Schwalbenschwanz now, so it doesn't take 2 minutes to leave Galgenkopf and head down the Dottinger Hohe. So he should squeeze a fast lap out of this. Remember, a session that is re-timetabled to finish at 5:45 in the evening will extend, due to the nature of this track, the length of it could easily extend to about 5:06. So 90 seconds left on the clock. He will easily cross the line. And this is an attempt to get as high up that grid as possible, as I say, with quite a number of question marks remaining around the 16 top qualifying cars that did their stuff at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Whereas Bastian Buus, he's also in a similar part. He's behind the 98, so with 1 minute and 15 seconds remaining, could be tight for Bastian Buus. Assenheimer as well.
No, sorry, I've got the wrong Bastian then, because as you quite rightly say, Ben, they put the names in the right order now for the Dane. So this is a flying lap for Bastian Buus.
Yeah, he's up at the Flansgarten at the moment, so it's not looking good for him to get by and take on another lap. Van der Linde's made it with about 47 seconds on the clock. However, the number 54 just coming up the Schwalbenschwanz now. 40 seconds left on the clock. He's not going to do that. So Bastian Buus in the dynamic Porsche is going to have to settle for where he is, I'm afraid.
It's a long way down for that 54. Strong team, Dynamic Motorsport from Italy, racing in the Italian GT Championship. We've got Cairoli, Loic Hartog, Joel Sturm in that car again. Drivers that I haven't seen a huge amount of versus Bastian Buus's name. But they are one of the last.
In 2 cars here.
Is he?
Yeah, you mentioned he was in the Hyundai Elantra.
No.
Is that Luke Hartog?
No. Well, that's another Luke, I think.
Ah, right.
No, that's Matthias Lauk.
Matthias Lauk. Yeah, sorry. I'm getting my Lauks and my Lukes mixed up.
Hartog, he's only in 1 car, but he is on the list of 7 drivers doing all 3
There is
24-hour
Lauk.
races.
As if
No, there you go.
shall receive, just coming into the pits in the Hyundai Elantra. 830 is the number on that car. And that session, they are ready to finish it at the checkered flag. And we will get a lot of cars still out on the track, as we are now. 0 time remaining on the clock, and the checkered flag will be flying on the start-finish straight.
Did Norbert Schiedler improve on his last lap? No, he didn't. So what happened to him? He got caught in traffic and then backed out of it. So really, the only car out there to improve, Bastian Buus is not improved from 15th, and it wasn't an attempt because it's an 8:21.8, his best time an 8:19.0, so it was an attempt to go faster, but he hasn't been able to, and it really does leave, in terms of the top runners, Van der Linde with the only driver that can improve. Norbert Schiedler, was slow in sector 1. It was a full Grand Prix loop for sector 1, so he won't be improving.
Now you can, after the checkered flag, go around the full lap here, can't you?
Yeah.
You're not bringing them in the back door. And this is an opportunity for some of the cars and drivers, some of the teams and drivers, I should say, another lap on the tyres, just to see, what another lap, if they're trying to evaluate tyre wear, that will give them that. And again, track familiarisation for certain drivers will come in handy with an extra lap as well.
It's what Seidler's doing, because Seidler did a 3.5 minutes sector 1, which should be 40 seconds, but every other sector is a green sector for that car. This is the 84 machine, which is an Audi R8. And so he is pushing on. He won't be an improvement because his first sector was so slow.
That's true, but he hasn't seen the checkered flag yet, has he? So I think later on, when we get to about 5:26 and cars are coming across the line to see the checkered flag, then you are obliged to go into pit lane via the back door, having done a Grand Prix lap. The other thing I've just noticed is that an awful lot of the cones right in front of our commentary box have been absolutely obliterated from their position. So somebody's caught those cones at the end of the long line of them. This is the final session of the week where that extra or a sort of semi-coned off lane, and it is a single lane up against the pit wall, will be in use. Checkered flag just beyond where those cones used to stand is now being waved. And there's definitely a chance for Kelvin van der Linde to improve in the 98 BMW from Rover Racing.
What's the splits look like at the moment?
They're okay.
Yeah? 42.7 in Sector 2 is the fastest, and he did a 43.0, so that's just 0.3 off the best. And he's given away 1.2 in Sector 3 as well. Giving away 0.2 of a second in the tiny Sector 4, which is just 10 seconds long, and we're awaiting the long Sector 5 of 1.5 minutes, or 1:45 seconds actually, for him to complete that. He just completes it at 1:47.1, so another 0.9 of a second given away over the fastest lap time. But in total, he is still 6.5 seconds shy of the best time that we've had all weekend. Christopher Haas's best time in qualifying, better than top qualifying as well. So it could be possible improvement.
Seidler, as you say, in the 84 Easterland Audi, quicker than it's been across all of the 3 sessions to this point, apart from that opening sector when he either began from the pits or he did a loop of the Grand Prix circuit. But Easterland could be giving just their engineers an idea of how fast that Audi might go in the race. Wasn't one of the list of pre-qualifiers for the top qualifying session and didn't manage to sneak in either. But if one Audi can go fast, then you would expect all the R8s to have similar performance. It's the same balance of performance across each of the individual manufacturers.
What is very impressive is just how well that Toyota JR Super GT4 and the number 110. Now he gets overtaken by van der Linde, but as quick through that section of Klostertal and up towards the carousel, very little gain by van der Linde on the Toyota. Now we find stretches its legs on the stretch from the carousel out towards Whipham, and now the number 98 is in that section heading towards Brunchen, which is where you make the time up here, I think.
It's amazing how much you can hear the tyre scrub.
Yeah.
I mean, there really is wheel squeal in some of the corners, isn't there? It's an unusual thing to hear, but it must be now the type of tarmac we've got in certain parts of the area.
It tells me it's a pretty hardish compound, that.
Yeah, okay. What are they on? Are they on the Michelin?
It would have to be.
Yeah, pretty sure they are.
Is on a Michelin, yeah. Michelin.
Well, yeah, they're known to be hard. We now have a green sector for van der Linde in Sector 6. It's only a 35-second sector, and he has given away another 0.6 of a second to Christopher Haas. So we should point out this is not going to be the fastest time of qualifying, but he does only need to find a couple of seconds to be the fastest of those not through in qualifying, in top qualifying, and certainly he could do with improving.
Yeah, looking to better an 8:14.6, which is the Marek Bachmann time, long-standing from yesterday's qualifying 2, but the first 15 minutes of qualifying 2, so at about 8:10 last night, that 8:14.6 was set in the orange and green Aston Martin Vantage of Pro Sport Racing. The difficulty here down the Dottinger Höhe is that Kelvin van der Linde has got no one else to play with, if you like, down the Dottinger Höhe. There's no car that can create a tow that we will get many times over in the race. Therefore, the kidney grill, the flaring nostrils of the BMW, gulping in air as it now hits the brakes into Tiergarten. Hohenrhein immediately afterwards. There's no doubt Kelvin van der Linde is pushing as hard as he feels is comfortable to do so. And we'll go across the line then. The 98 BMW setting, it's not an improvement. It's already done an 8:16.7, and that's an 8:18.7. So lost 2 seconds in comparison to its previous best lap in the other sessions. There are now yellow flags at Arenberg.
Yeah, I'm not so sure how and why, because there's no car there.
That's a good question.
So a bit of debris perhaps in the foxhole.
Yeah. Top of that run down to Adenauer Forst. If you're crossing the line now to see the checkered flag, you will be allowed to slow down on the Grand Prix track, but then be waved, I'm sure, via the Hyundai Curva. That's the hairpin, by the way, that links or is the end of the Grand Prix track, and you can use a bit of that to head down pit lane. So, nobody's managed to better the Christopher Haase time that was set at just after 8 o'clock last night. The 28 Lamborghini has had different drivers in it through the course of the session afterwards, or sessions, but no improved time for the 28, the 27 Lamborghinis that both made it into top qualifying, as did the 34 Valkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martin. So that is it for qualifying. In fact, all of the positions, bar the shouting, should have been decided now for the grid and the 53rd edition of the ADAC RAVENOL 24 hours of the Nürburgring. Thanks to Ben Constanduros, Joe Bradley. I'm Johnny Palmer, signing off after 2 very intense days of qualifying. We'll see you tomorrow for the warm-up session, which begins at midday, and the race starts itself at 4 o'clock, with the build-up beginning at 3:30. Bye-bye for now. Enjoy your Friday night.